It says live. Yeah. I didn't feel too good this morning, so I've just been lazing around. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but I'm feeling a little better now. So we'll try, but we'll see. It might be short. So I believe I have the links all up in the appropriate places and so on. That was saved. And of course it's got a message, which is probably, so we'll try, but we'll see. That was, the audio is fine.
What are you talking about science for? What's up, Pyro?
I'm not. Hey, I guess I sent you the link correctly this time then.
Yes, thank y'all.
Okay, so I figured it out. Basically, there's the Google Plus version of the Hangout.
Yep.
And comments in there, okay, go out to people to pay attention to Google Plus. Okay, I've been doing that a couple weeks now, so I guess I figured that part out. Next, I need to actually put everybody in a list, because like I have an Illusions Hangout list that, like, in my mind, people would join on their own, but of course, I've got to put people in there, and that's who I could notify. And then you are in a list, but I was never using it, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I have a list of fellow vloggers, and I just never used it, but today I did. You probably got 2 invites, actually.
Well, I seen it, right? I seen the thing, and I was like, give me the link. Because what it does is it gives you the event page. It gives you the event page, but doesn't give you a link unless you spam the link yourself on the Google, so it's a bit annoying that way.
Yeah, and then you would have to go to my channel and search for it and see if, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think I've mastered it now.
Ah, good stuff. Anyway,
Well,
yes, I want to talk about I want to talk about the new Nobel Prize winner Gary and his new physics. I'm so stoked. I haven't pissed myself so much in the last couple of days about this whole Gary physics thing. It's just mind-blowingly funny. It literally is. Try and get him in here. Just get him in. I don't care.
I'm not sure about that because I think I'm past being able to talk to Gary because I'm not really, you know, I am totally into discussing crazy science theories, and they're not necessarily crazy. And like I said in my video, you know, there's a good reason to do it. There's room for philosophy about physics and different, you know.
Well, this is the thing, Pyro. It's called theoretical physics. That's the whole point, right? We're trying to theorize. Well, why is this the way it is? And yeah, Gary is an oddball, right? But the point you were making, which I loved about the video, is don't be a dick about it. Like, if someone's asking you questions, like half of these videos about 1 billion times worse than yours, half of they just calls them stupid. Like, that's
well,
it.
At this point, but he's actually gone through stuff very, very carefully. I mean, which, you know, and that's why actually I decided I would get back, you know, say something actually, because he's gone through it very carefully, and I figured, okay, but you know, it's already too late for it to be a discussion really between him and me, because I've been talking to him about physics, and you know, he's take it this way, his ideas are changing over time, like everybody. He's developing this system. He has new diagrams he didn't have yesteryear and whatnot, right? So it's changing. So I'm helping you change it by pointing out things that are an issue with it. And people, of course, in the comments, many are like, why even bother? You shouldn't do this. But
okay, I'll say this right. I would rather him talk about physics and be wrong about physics than him talk about antinatalism any day of the week.
I guess there's
any day of the week. Any day. Because I've noticed he's not doing the whole, you know, push the red button logic bollocks that much. He's trying to do the whole physics thing. And I even posted on his on his YouTube. I was like, dude, if you keep making physics videos, that's a good thing. Stop with the antinatalism bollocks, because that's just so flawed. Like, the push the red button bollocks is just like, you know, it's fucking useless.
Well, I'm wondering if there isn't, hey Justin, I'm going to add you. I'm wondering if there isn't, you know, I don't know how important it really is for like us and our discussions to address anything, but to the degree that it is, and we're looking at important things, I'm concerned about, like, there's support for Gary. You know, it's somewhat nutty, but not all of it's nutty. based on the idea that science itself is some sort of a dogma. And, really the problem is there's not enough general science knowledge. People that think that it's like some sort of a priesthood, it's ridiculous. Scientists are in the job of arguing how to explain the things they haven't explained yet. Stuff that's gotten explained, there's often anomalies. Like the ultraviolet catastrophe that they're trying to explain, which will make them go back into basics like Newtonian's laws of mechanics and modify those. And every scientist in physics knows that. That's
No, but I mean,
job.
yeah,
So how could this be a dogma of the kind people are complaining, where you have a book for 1,000 years that supposedly already has all the answers? These people are looking for new answers. They're not feeding you answers they already got from the Bible. It's new answers. I mean, that's that. They don't have to be right.
But the beauty of science, and this is why I don't like the whole dogma thing about the beauty of science, is we're meant to be able to go, oh no, you're completely wrong now. And then people go, oh wow, yeah, it is wrong, and move on. It's not supposed to be some like, well, Jesus died on a cross. Well, we can't really debate that anymore. Do you get what I'm saying? But that's the beauty of science.
Well, for example, you know about the bet that Stephen Hawking had a bet with some guy. Basically, it wasn't Susskind. It was another guy that's on Susskind's side of the whole debate. So, and then, he admitted it. And the fact is, they have not proved one way or the other. He admitted that by his own reasoning, that information was not lost, in black holes. They haven't really proved either one of those things, but among themselves, they had their little battle. They honestly argued. They convinced each other, and he pays the dollar bet or whatever it was, symbolic science bet. Those are always fun.
But that's funny. Isn't that funny, though? In the sense, like, you would never get that between religious people.
No, or politicians or anything, really.
No. But scientists are there to try and explain the universe, not trying to... Okay, we award Nobel Prizes to people who go, oh, well, that's fucking interesting. I mean, here's a prize. But you can still... Like Einstein was a fucking brain on legs. Even Einstein was... Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just saying my family just got back. They went
I was saying Einstein was a fucking brain on legs, but even Einstein was proven wrong, right? And Einstein was like, I didn't come up with this black hole shit. Well, yes, you did, because it's in your equations, And he was just fundamentally against the whole... He called quantum mechanics or the fucking spooky action at a distance thing. He was like, no, that's stupid, right? Even though we know it's not stupid, because we can fucking prove it in a laboratory. It's not stupid. We know how electrons spin, and if you separate two electrons and all that shit, one of them will spin over there. Because we've tested it in a lab. Einstein wasn't around when we had fucking particle fucking accelerator machines that we do today. It's just a fact. Science is one of them things that keeps moving. If you say science is the only method of knowledge, then that's a dogmatic approach, right?
Hey, I wanted to say welcome, Kevin. Welcome, Kevin, and I'm okay. You guys are all on board now.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. Okay, good, because my microphone was not working for a second. Sorry. Hello. Hello, everyone.
Probably Google, just being Google, as usual.
Yeah, what is it with the fucking Hangouts, man? Google, you'd think they'd know how to run technology.
No, they keep changing it all the time. That's the fucking problem. They're not happy. They're trying to separate it right from the whole fucking YouTube
I feel like I've come in and broken the flow, because that sounded like some serious shit going down, and now we're talking
No, not really. I don't think we're probably going to talk too much about the science. I just happen to have made a bit of a rant against one of our people that we know. I don't know if you know him, Menham, but he's got his recent thing is he's this theory of everything, kind of nutty science theory, which is fine. I've always been into them. I mean, back in the 80s when I was working as a student, in a scientific environment, before emails, some of the scientists would have these kind of letters. They would get letters, from, you're trying to keep us out. It's always the same. It's a big conspiracy. You guys are just in a club and blah, blah, blah. And I've always found it fascinating. And there can be bits of truth in that stuff, too, because there's a lot of room in natural philosophy to do thinking about science, and some of these crazy theories, kind of have like some little, a little token
No,
of what they're trying to go for. Yeah, what were they trying? So
That might be true, but when you have to resort to it's a big conspiracy, you're keeping us out, isn't that
yeah,
precisely what the creationists do as well? Like
yeah.
if you can demonstrate an actual fucking conspiracy against you, fine. But just saying there's a conspiracy, well, no,
it's
you can't
bullshit.
just claim some shit.
Didn't Inmendum have some sort of weird thing about, there's like a pixel to, I don't know, he had this weird thing, like the difference between this, and he explained it to me one time, and I said, "What's your proof of this?" And he was like,
I fucking told you.
"It's all theoretical."
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? And this is with because I seen Paros video, and I've been watching half a days as well, or half a day. It cracks me up because anytime I mention science to Gary, he's like, "Oh, fucking science!" And like now he's doing the whole science thing and physics. And I'm just like, dude, you're such a hypocrite. Like, really? Like, come on. The fucking guy doesn't even know what a mole is, and he's telling me like he knows physics. Shut up.
Not to patronize him or anything, but
No, well, I'm
it's
gonna
fair to say, like, he's probably has some sort of mild mental condition. Not to patronize him or anything.
It's called having a stroke above my head.
Well, we all do, but the thing is, he asks for feedback, and he wants scientists to give feedback, but if just an amateur armchair, some science in college person is going to point out a detail, you're going to have to, that's a little speed bump. You might want to be able to get over that speed bump before you go into the brick wall of trying to argue this stuff. Yeah, with the quantum mechanical, they do like, what the hell? There's nothing to really discuss.
And you know what? I would love to see him do a mathematical equation. I like that boggles my mind. This is the thing. It's like, do you know, like, equations? What type of equations you're gonna use to come up with your model? Drawing on paper, sat in your house, doesn't make you a fucking theoretical physicist because you read it on YouTube and you think this is the way shit is.
Well, I quite like the arrogance of him saying he wants feedback from scientists. How many, like, fucking theoretical physicists or whatever do you think are trolling around little chicken?
No, but he's actually offered to pay $1,000.
Oh, he should get his hair cut
for a day's work.
I think he should just get his hair cut full stop.
Actually, I mean, for a contracting rate for a scientist paying $1,000 and being willing to do for a day, in the right price range, he could find somebody at that price range. But the problem is, he's not going to get anywhere because line 1, 2, 3. You can't start with 5 things that we agree about photons that aren't true.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he could just tweet
that we don't agree on, right?
And or tweet fucking, I don't know. I'm trying to name a scientist who would bother to respond, but there's probably somebody out there who just told him to go fuck himself for $1,000. Like, fuck off. There you go. There's your paper review. Fuck off. You're stupid.
Exactly. I'll tell him to go fuck himself for free.
Yeah. Like, he's such a snarky cunt, mind. Like, I think, like, when Pyro says, like, it's okay to think about stuff, yeah, that's fine. But as soon as you start trying to think that you're a theoretical physicist, that's kind of insulting to science itself.
Hey, guys, I got to go for just a second. My family got home. I got a conversation to have here. I'll be right back, though.
Make sure you go mute so we can't fucking hear it. There we go.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That it's insulting to the people who've trained for fucking years. Like this internet assembled expertise these people think they have. It's ridiculous. Like I'm not an expert on shit, but I'll say it. But I'll say, look, I'm not a trained professional on this.
This is my opinion,
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like me going up to a mechanic and going, "Oh no, I built an engine," and they're like, "Did you?" And I'm like, "No, but this is my opinion." It's like, well, shut up then. You're paying me to fix your car, not the other way around.
Yeah, I drew an engine on some paper, so I'm qualified.
That makes me an engineer, apparently. I drew it. I'm an engineer all of a sudden. No, it takes a long time for you to do shit and be qualified. That's why we have qualified people.
Not just that, but with things like, say, theoretical physics or whatever, that's not even something that even if a lot of people, even if they worked really hard all their lives, they couldn't get to that sort of level because it's some shit that either works for your brain or doesn't. Or that's some really deep shit.
Well, I mean, look, I love science, but when I listen to some people, I'm just like, you didn't even start at the basics. Do you know what I mean? Like, it boggles my mind, and I'm pretty smart. What are you on about? You know, kind of thing. So, I'm not a fucking scientist. Don't want to be a scientist. I'm not that nerdy. I just want to build computer games. You know? But when someone says, well, a photon does this and does that, and I'm like, dude, did you ever read a science book? Because it doesn't do that shit at all. Unless you want to win a Nobel Prize and change the entire functionality of the fucking universe at this point. Just saying, you know. So, yeah.
I thought
armchair fucking philosophy is bollocks in that regards of science.
I thought Hyphladay made an excellent response video to him earlier.
He's made like 4.
I didn't want to comment because I knew that Gary would be reading the comments, so I figured I wouldn't stir the pot, so to speak.
That's why
But yeah, I thought it was very well done the way everything was laid out, and I actually learned a few things watching it. You know, it was very cool the way that was done. Now, if Gary gets mad about that, what are you going to say? You know, what are you going to do about that? You know,
he gets mad about everything. That's his problem. He's not willing to listen.
Being angry, isn't that like his fucking resting state? That's like his normal.
Yeah, he's a photon at this point. That was a nice joke, right? That was a good joke. Unless you don't do physics, but yeah, that was a good joke.
All of a sudden there's dead space. I was watching a thing on Sun Tzu on history and stuff, and
the
Art of War, and he was talking about well, not him, but the narrator was talking about how people use. They had Westmoreland on there talking about how people use chess scenarios to fight a war. And what he was saying is that the Vietnamese or whatever, in the war, they were using more of this kind of a what Sun Tzu would use. That was like a Go game, right? And I'm not familiar with the rules of a Go game, but when I was watching Hypladay's video, I was kind of seeing something in that, in the way that Gary was attacking the issue of how photons would move and electrons and all that, and how Hypladay saw it in a different way, explained it in a different way. And I thought maybe the Go game would work as an analogy, maybe in future videos.
Well, the thing is with Gary is he's that stupid that he doesn't understand what he's actually saying, and because his vocabulary is so poor, he could actually have something interesting to say, but the fact that he's so dumb and says shit so stupidly, you would not make any sense of it. Like, literally.
Even if he had the vocabulary, his delivery style is appalling. It's just scattergun, stream of consciousness shite.
Well, look, let's think about it this way, right? A guy claims to know about science and come up with this theory of everything shit, yet he still is the guy that came up with the bright idea of pushing the big red button. There's an imbalance there, if you ask me. If you know what I'm trying to point out at this.
Well, he's either a massive idiot or the biggest genius humanity's ever produced. And I'm not betting on the best.
Massive idiot. But he's just clueless. Like, really.
It's if you watch it sort of dispassionately, as if like what he's saying isn't total bollocks or whatever, it's actually quite interesting to watch. As like if he was a performance artist pretending to be a prick, like he's nailed it. You know what I mean?
I kind of think that's what's going on. I've always thought that Mendham was a really good entertainer, and I thought that's where it ends. That's all there is to it. But I could be wrong. Maybe he is serious about a lot of the stuff he's saying and doing.
I'm not sure, to be honest. He's always been not necessarily like a fame whore or anything, but you get the feeling, like you say, he's an entertainer. He's not really.
I'm gonna say he's a narcissistic little cunt. He just is. He likes the sound of his own fucking view of the universe. And if you don't agree with Gary, he will shout you down because he's a bully. That's it. He just bullies people. He can't take constructive criticism. He hates it. It's like he's like a kid in a sweet shop who can't have the most expensive sweet, so he'll just stand there and just cry like a fucking annoying kid does. Even though you've given the most expensive sweet you could possibly buy, you will still say, "No, I want that one. I want that one." He's like a big child. That's it. He literally is a child in a grown-ass man's body. And especially when it comes to physics, like, I've got no idea where he's coming from with his theory of everything thing. You can't know everything if physics tells us that's impossible already.
Well,
Physics
see, kind of.
it's impossible to know everything. It's called quantum mechanics. It's impossible to know everything. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, his theory, to me, on the surface, it kind of sounds like the holographic theory in a sense, and I never put too much stock into that. But some people, think there's something to it.
I think there is.
Oh
No,
yeah,
no, because the whole holographic theory comes from fucking fractal shit. You can't have a source that reverberates on itself. We are not ourselves. It just makes no sense. This is the point, and quantum mechanics already shows us this. You cannot measure something if you are the measuring stick. That's what quantum mechanics says at its basis, you know?
Oh, Kevin just dropped out. Had you come back in, and I should give controls to other people. Sorry to ignore what you were just saying. Welcome, Chris, and I should probably share some controls. I don't know. Did Kevin go and come back in and then not have?
Me. He couldn't get broadcasted, or he's just
Sorry.
Oh no, he was broadcasted actually, Kev.
He was, but then I just noticed he wasn't. He came in good, so there you are, broadcasting. And I'll share some controls.
Give me the controls. Happy New Year, by the way, Pyro. I didn't actually say that before. Happy New Year to everybody, actually, even though it's a bit late in the game.
Happy New Year.
I don't think his theory is like the holographic theory. I wish. The holographic theory, as it currently stands in this quantum information universe, is kind of a product of that debate between Hawking and the Susskind side. And I think it's simple, actually. They just realized, basically, the way I see it, the quantum computer guys figured something out, which is everything is a computer. It's just a semantic thing, right? Because it has an input state, it has a state at one point, and if you're trying to make quantum computers, you're going to take this state at one point, which is information, you put it through some quantum system, and you get the result state, and it's a computation. But guess what? Every physical system in the universe is doing that.
Yes,
starting with information, and then a quantum process, and then it might be noise in and noise out, but it's a computer.
Yeah,
so basically, we are in a computer, more or less, logically.
We're only in our understanding of what the universe is equals computer. That's all.
Well, I mean, you know what? The word computer is the wrong one. I wouldn't want to emphasize that. We are what has happened, I think, is that we've got to the point where information is a physical thing.
Well,
we thought maybe it was like love and just a word.
No, it's not. You're on the right track there. No, you're on the right track in a sense. Information theory, right, is kind of a real thing, because information theory led to the inflation thing in regards to the universe and shit. So information's real, but we don't know how to give it a physical property. We know it's real. We used to use it in the sense of how we used to do punctuation cards for fucking whatever the fuck it was with the fucking.
Well, I think they do know how. They do know how, basically.
No, but we don't.
States are information, right?
No, but a state.
Polarity is left or right. That's information.
No, but it still requires, like, we can't have an esoterical property. Like, if you think about it this way, right? Like, let's say we got an electron, right? And then we've got a proton or some shit, right? One's positively charged, one's negatively charged, right? The only difference is that we're giving them values. That's the only difference there, right? So the information of them two states is only based on our understanding. Now, what if you lived? What if you're a different human? What if you're a different alien who sees it the other way, right? What if you're an alien that goes, well, the neutron's positive and the electron's negative, What if you see the universe that way?
It doesn't
That
matter.
would
The
literally
information
change.
in the
No,
there's still information in the universe. How
yeah,
you
but that no,
translate
but
it
that
in your
no,
own
but that would
language,
no,
words
but
of
that
it.
would that would change your entire interpretation of what's going on. That's what I'm trying to say. So the information is hard to nail down because what is that? What is that
No, but see, for
interaction?
example, okay, but this may not be true in the end, but I mean, Susskind, for example, points out that the reason your computer's heating up is because it's throwing away information. That's what the heat is. The heat is what was information because your computer memory doesn't just sit there; it's constantly refreshed at your clock speed.
Yeah, I know that's true, and the
So yeah,
information.
so that makes
No, but
information
no,
pretty damn
but
physical when it
no,
can
but
warm your
yeah,
feet.
yeah, but that heat, if we recognize it's heat, that goes back to Maxwell's theory of the demon, right? It goes back to Maxwell's demon. So it isn't going anywhere. It's still in the same place. It's just being not utilized. It's still the information isn't just being used. That's all. It's not just being wasted. It's just not being utilized.
Well, I'm just
That's
saying
all.
that
That's Maxwell's
information.
demon. Maxwell's demon says that if you put a fridge next to an oven, the only way you can discern that if you can understand the difference between these atoms. Human beings are technically Maxwell's demon. This is the scary thing about Maxwell's demon. You guys can look it up. I don't need to fucking waffle on about it, but it's an interesting idea to think that we are doing the exact same thing as Maxwell's demon in regards to the information thing, because then it breaks entropy, literally. And then we get to the chaos aspect of half a day made a video about it, and I commented on a video that I commented on about entropy, where this guy was like, well, entropy's, I made it this way and it's supposed to be that way. I think it was 60 symbols or some shit. Ever greater entropy would lead to ever greater order in the universe. And that's bizarre. And it requires energy in order for you to get entropy. So where's that energy coming from? What's that? You know? Where's the energy coming from to get entropy? Which is the ever greater disorder
Well,
of the universe.
in this holographic universe of quantum information, entropy is now cast as information you don't have, basically.
Well, that would make sense.
If you get, for example, if you have a chamber and you have a little hole for your thermometer, you put your thermometer in and you get information out. What's the average temperature in there that this thermometer encountered when it went in there? And it took heat out of the system to heat the thermometer, because that's how thermometers work. And so that information actually cooled the system, reduced the entropy in the system by a little tiny amount. Exactly how much depends on the information that was collected in the device.
But that still takes energy, right? Gary was talking about some of the crazy shit. The universe itself, and this is why Tesla was a badass. Tesla said we can literally take the expansion of the universe and use that as energy, like literally.
You see how it's much easier to just say God did it?
No.
Yeah.
God did
it.
Yeah, but God did it. It's just far too simple for me. I know you're joking. I know you're joking, Kev. Calm down. I know you're joking.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, it's far too easy to do the whole God thing because it's way more complex than that. I don't think. Okay, from my perspective as someone who loves science and math, here's a challenge to anybody who watches this video. Find me an equation where human beings or life is actually inside of the universe in applied mathematics. If you can find that, I will personally pay you $500. Be my guest. In fact, I will work for you as a slave for the rest of eternity.
I think
there's a challenge for you.
Oh, look, I do have icons in here. Okay, anyway. I think there's an issue of how people think that's really bugging me, and after these decades of online discourse, I'm kind of bugged with what should I do about this. But, you know, people think in this associational way. For example, if somebody wanted to figure out what they'd want to know, what is science like? What is physics like? They would want to go to a group of physicists They would. What is astronomy like? Well, the Tyson fellow and Hawking's astrophysicist, and so you'd think of those people. And then whatever they have in common in their personality, that would be science. That's what people think of what is science or feminism. I know these people, they say they're feminists. So what is feminism? Well, it's the thing that's bonding this community. No, things can have technical definitions, right? You can pursue the technical definitions. There really is no other way to do good thinking. To think associationally is ridiculous because it's like back when, let's say, every doctor in Europe believed in letting blood and leeches. So that's what doctoring is believing in leeches. Yeah. Let's give up on doctoring. No, you keep going because doctoring isn't about that. It's about something else. And if a whole generation makes a mistake, so they can move on if they have a definition for what they're doing that isn't based on it's our club. It names how we are.
It becomes a meme at that point, doesn't it? In that regards.
Well, I think a lot of people have this problem with scientists, and they think they don't even have access to scientists, so they think in generally, in this confusion between what technology is and what science is, and the oppression of technology, the fact that we're having more and more production, but also we have poverty. They associate all this with the science behind the technology, and then that's what they think science is, and then. It's conspiracy theory time. The USGS is trying to, hide weather control, and NASA knows there's, all this bullshit that they couldn't possibly know or hide. I mean, I worked in NASA. People aren't hiding things from each other. Obviously, there's certainly Department of Defense stuff and Black Ops, but that's not a NASA.
Wait, Pyro, did you work at NASA?
Yes, I did. I was
awesome.
Were you involved in the moon landings being faked?
Yeah, he photoshopped the fucking moon.
No, I was involved in the Voyager approach to Neptune being faked.
Yeah. No, this is the funny thing, right? I totally agree with what Pat was saying here. I think the problem is you get really low-educated people who are so afraid that other people know shit, and they're like, no, that's scary. They're just fearful-minded people. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, it's because Kevin's got a son in the fucking wall. He's in the Illuminati.
I have got a son in the wall. That is definitely true.
No, look, literally there. He's a part of the Illuminati. He's here to convince the rest of the internet that, there is no such thing as the moon, even though we can all see it in the sky. Yeah, that's NASA. Yeah, NASA hologram there.
No, what's better is that the friggin' stars are archangels. The fallen archangels.
Well, to pick up on that point about conspiracy theorists being scared people, they are. Basically, it's an inability, and it's understandable in a sort of weak-minded person, to just accept that sometimes random shit happens, and you might get killed by a terrorist, or you might, I don't know, get some sort of fucking poisoning from some product or another, and it can just randomly happen, or it can be a conspiracy
of just get knocked off
ordinary people doing horrible things, rather than it has to be some big grand government conspiracy.
Yeah,
I don't think that's behind Gary's, for example, theory. And I don't necessarily think he's gone too much to the conspiracy side, but he has by calling these scientists idiots and liars, is basically the same thing. But his thing is another thing, which is people believe their common sense should pan out. And we should know by now, the last really 200 years of physics, that's not how it works. And we should remember, because, it seems common sense, the Earth's round. It doesn't look fucking round. It was obviously, we can imagine first being told or figuring that out, easy to deny, right? Easy to ignore. That's what the history of science is. It's common sense after common sense being overturned.
No, but
Gary's not willing to look at nature and say, geez, my common sense needs a little evolution.
Yeah. But even worse than that is, he's going, well, all these scientists are stupid. Yeah, I'm going to base all my equations on these scientists to prove them wrong. It's like, yeah, you're not Archimedes, pal. I'm just saying. You just know. You didn't invent it.
Well, but you were the one saying it's a good thing to get into for him.
These people are the nice side.
I would rather listen to him talk complete shit about science than him trying to be like some suicide advocate, to be quite frank. And that's my opinion.
Maybe that's Gary's real motivation. Actually, maybe it's not so much the science, but just to get off of this one trick. I mean, when I started following Gary, he was covering Mendham. He covered all his issues that he likes that we hardly ever hear about anymore. Several of which I agree. IRV, his idea for paying students for doing well in school, and tutors, and his ideas about orphanages and all of this stuff and local politics, and then all devolved down into
just a one-trick pony.
Anti-Semitism.
Well, that guy Pardo, he was on your fucking thing. That I had to bash him. I had to totally bash him. He just made me laugh so much. I was like, dude, you're so fucking stupid. And we had like some little arguments. I was just like, oh, fuck off, you fucking idiot. He said, ask fucking Gary for tips. He's answering. He says, just do me a favor, stop breathing, save my air, please. I require it. You're obviously wasting it. So yeah, fuck him.
Well, but this leads to a really different way of that I realize how out of sync I am then with everybody else, because when I hear something like MRA, I'm like, men's rights activism. Okay, so I went to see if any of them had issues. And now the issues have become well known. I went to the cafe one, the Canadians or whatever. This was a couple years ago probably now. And, I saw, and my approach was, hell yeah, I'm on board. Yes. And I'm happy.
What?
Oh, totally. Men
God.
deserve rights. And you know what? I'm happy that when I'm protesting war, I can point out it's a men's issue. And when I'm doing labor activism, I can point out there's men's issues in that. That's fine with me. I'm not going to assume MRA is a club of the people that invent that. For one reason is because a lot of activists have mental issues because it takes you losing your son in the Iraq War to go from being a conservative mother, Cindy Sheehan, to becoming a liberal. So people have access to grind. They've all got all kinds of things that make them ignore the regular part of life and go try to do activism. So I'm not going to judge their idea of what needs to be done based specifically on those people. Just like abolitionism, good thing, doesn't, and the League of Women Voters, great thing.
Can we just get off this topic?
Guess what? The woman the great feminist that started the League of Women Voters, racist. What are you going to say? So that means that that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that individuals and generations have certain characteristics which are important. But if we're going to talk, for example, about the character of MRA or the character of feminists, then we can say, hey, a group right now, 2016, this generation, this subgroup, we could talk demographics and be talking psychology of society. That's separate from what is the point of these activisms.
Yeah, I love when creationists bring up, they say, oh, Charles Darwin was racist. What? So therefore, evolution isn't true?
Yeah. The thing. Well, that's what I love to point out to them. I do that because obviously, I'm not a white dude, but that technically shouldn't matter. In the sense of like them being totally fucking idiotic. But I pointed out. I said, look, you keep quoting Charles Darwin like he's the only guy on the fucking planet who's ever came up with this.
You quote him as if he's relevant to modern science.
Yeah, and he's not. Like, he was then, and, you've got to give him props going, well, something's going on here. Yeah, well, duh. Yes, that's why we give him props. But was he completely stupidly fucking wrong saying black people were chimps? Yes, he was. It's like, get a grip. But creationists love the whole Charles Darwin. It's like, oh, come on, get a fucking clue. It's the year 2016. We don't live in caves anymore, But they love the Charles Darwin thing there, Kevin. I will say that.
I mean, I think we need to get over hero kinds, the ideas of heroes that I think we all started off with. I don't know how much generationally it is, but it certainly seems.
I don't have heroes. I just like people to understand science is a progression thing, man. There's even in the future, Stephen Hawking is going to be proved wrong. Susskind's going to be proved wrong. Machu Kaku was proven wrong by a 14-year-old child who said, well, what if they did this? And he was like, well, that's interesting. Like, literally, he admitted it on the news. He got a message from, like, a 14-year-old kid saying, well, can't we have this type of civilization? Because, you know, there's like different types of civilization, type 1, type 2, type 3, whatever. And he added a type 4, which is epic. Because of a question from a 14-year-old kid who said, well, what if you can actually have multiple galaxies as your shit? I mean, why not? And he was like,
Sugar
okay,
Ant.
that's like type 4.
Hey,
Type
welcome,
4,
Huck. Welcome, Sugar Ant. Oh, he disappeared, right?
Wasn't
when I
me.
said that. Well,
You get the point.
Quintica, you and I have been talking about this. I think this is an example of why I think there's a problem with hero and villain metaphor in general, is because we expect, I love Bob Marley.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, turns out he cheated on his wife. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but, I heroized people like that. It bothered me to find out that Martin Luther King was
a whore.
Any little deviation. And I think this is because of hero worship. And it's really better not to have heroes, to respect people for their accomplishments and hate them, throw them in jail when they're criminals and all the rest. But you don't need to hero and demonize them because nobody really could stand up to those standards. And if you carry this hero standard around like we have for centuries, then what you do is priests get away with, raping little kids. Why? Well, because a blemish in the priesthood is not acceptable, so cover up. Heroism relates to our tendency to cover up. I mean, isn't it counterintuitive? Why, when somebody in a position of authority or a cop does something wrong, do we not want to punish that person, doubly? They get off the hook. Why? Because they were already heroes.
No, but no, it's not that we're heroes, right? It's we expect certain standards, right? I think that's the hero thing you're saying. It's not a person per se. It's a level of way we expect things to be, right? And we expect people to act a certain way. So if you're talking about a cop, no, we do. We expect cops to protect us, right? So but that's what
I'm saying. When they violate that assumption, that's
what I'm saying. The hero thing.
They don't get extra punished for violating that assumption. Instead, the heroism and whitewash of give them a break.
Okay, let me ask you guys something. Have you ever, at any time in your life, any point in your life, as far back as you can remember, have you ever idolized anyone?
I idolized my mum. I
was just saying, yeah.
Bob Marley, I idolized David Bowie. I mean, there's
okay, I've never idolized anyone. Never.
I have, just because.
I haven't. What I'm saying is, most people do. I have never idolized anyone. I have never looked at anyone and said, I want to be like them, or I want to be...
No, okay, then I'm misunderstanding your point.
Well, I never felt that I wanted to be like
I didn't want to be
like... I mean, it's kind of the general distinction between that and, say, like, role models in hero worship, right?
No, well, I mean...
You have to have role models, but you don't necessarily want to have the hero worship with it,
well,
right?
I don't want to...
I think, right, we don't want to throw the role model out with the bathwater. I mean, I think it's good we're growing up. And so there's definitely a biological thing where it's, instead of romantic love, it's kind of like a mentor thing where you can go, oh, my God, I want to learn that skill. I want to know what that person knows, or and so that's fine. And that's probably where the hero thing comes from. And we have to, on top of that, be really smart about it, because biologically, it's just like when you're attracted to somebody and your brain tells you it's meant to be, they must love you too. And, we have to be 21st century people to know that's a little more complicated than that.
I wanted to be like Bob Marley, not because, like, he could play guitar, though I love this music and I love Bunny Wailer and all that shit. I just liked the way he thought about the society in which we lived in at that time. It resonated with me. It was like just certain things he said, and I was like, wow, yeah, that's the way I think. And it was a relationship between relating to another human being. He was famous, but that didn't mean shit to me. It was just the fact that there was another human being who happened to think the same way as me, and that was cool at the time, right? That was the cool thing, that he thought the way I did.
Yeah, I agree. Was a good old like re-release album. I don't know if you can get it anymore, but I think it's called Bob Marley Speaks, and basically it had a song and then a quote, of him just talking, and his voice talking is just like poetry. It's just so
Dude,
graceful.
I've always said that.
But also he says great things like I love everybody, but I don't love them that fight me.
But that's the thing, like, we can apply that to any artist we want, but I agree with Pyro. It's like, I understand the heroism thing, but I don't agree with Quintic in the sense of it's not idolizing someone. You're relating to somebody, and you're going, I can relate to this person, and that's why you've then, I guess, put them on the pedestal. I know loads of artists in like my life, in the sense of what just through my own experience of being a human, and I go, I can relate to this person, and it could be just random shit, but I go, that relates to me, and if that's an ideal of some type, then okay, I can accept that. But I don't like the word idealism in the sense like I have to be like them. I'm just relating to them and putting them on a pedestal, if you know what I mean. Going, yeah, I like that, because they've said something to me.
Welcome to the room, Indifferent Sky and Farzin back, and you guys should both be able to broadcast, but I see you're saying your headphones are fucked up. I just opened the chat.
Piro, I'd like to defend myself on that point though about heroes, right?
You can defend yourself, dude.
Well,
good friends.
Well, give me a chance to die. Okay. I think that it's important to have some role models, but it's a nuanced situation. It's like we don't want to. Okay, it's like if I broke it down into like band analogies. When I was growing up, when I heard Alice Cooper and I saw like the first Alice Cooper album that I had, I was like, wow, this is really cool what he's doing, and it's really different. But that doesn't mean that I wanted to really push the boundaries he was doing as far as like the singing about necrophilia and all that other stuff. Now, it's all for show, but I used to think, he was kind of a bad guy for that back then. And then later on, I got into Peter Gabriel and David Bowie and stuff like that. And there's a lot of qualities that I admire in all of them, but I've never looked at them and said, oh, I want to be just like them. Right?
Well, I don't think anybody does that though, Quintic. I think that's what me and Pyro was saying. It's like, some people
like falling in love. It's not like trying to be that person. It's more like falling in love, and you just think that person's so fucking special.
Yeah, they're fucking.
Well, it's not even that because I've never thought they were special, and the few.
But often they are. I mean, I worshipped my religion was Pink Floyd. For 8 years probably. Okay, so that's fine. They were special. David Bowie, another example, high school, total hero, really. But as a human one. And so the issue though is just that they are special, but they're not perfect. And once you find out, you dig into their life, or you happen to hear, you can't be that surprised that they're mortal. Even if it means some great suffragette was also a racist, she's still a great suffragette and helped this country progress, just not in the racial area. And so, when you...
I'll give you a good example.
I want to ask you this, though, Quintic. Sorry, I went on too long with it, because really just... were you not defending, in the same way that you've been defending this idea of patriarchy, and I said it's just a word for traditionalism, and you said there's normative biology leading to that. That is my take on your argument about the hero worship, which is funny if you're not into heroes, but you have defended with me, or at least this seemed to me that you were defending this archetype of heroes and villains as something humans need psychologically, at least.
I stand by that. But what I'm saying is that there is a degree. I'm agreeing with you that there is a degree to where that's toxic, to where that turns into a bad thing. But we do need to have some form of structure, some form of role model for the cohesiveness of society, right?
But that comes from parents, though. It shouldn't come from some arbitrary random.
Well, no,
that's
it doesn't. Though.
That's not this hero trope, though. This hero versus
no,
villain.
I know. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Well,
Right,
okay.
role model is a way of not like if hero is a bad concept, I'm right, and you're throwing out that bathtub, role models, mentoring is the baby that you don't want to throw out. But it's pretty different from how our society sort of mentally uses the
Yeah.
concept of heroes.
Well,
Yeah,
see, that's true. That's true. There are different aspects to that. I would say to a point that you were making earlier. I would say that the problem that a lot of people have with different groups, right? With say it's a group, and I'm using the term in a broad sense, right? Say we're talking about feminist or anti-feminist or MRA or whatever, right? Okay, well, the thing in the way that the supposed members behave, right? Changes our outlook on what we think of feminism and stuff like that, even though it may not be an accurate representation of what it was meant to be, right? Okay, so now when we see that these feminists, when they get into video games and stuff like that, and they say, well, this is sexist or that's sexist or this has to be changed, I don't think that it's a statement that says that feminism is bad. I think it's the wrong application of feminism, right? I think that
I'll agree with that.
I think that it could be applied to certain situations and probably be the solution to certain situations. But what I'm seeing is that a lot of stuff is applied in the wrong way. And that hangout yesterday that we were in briefly, we were watching, and that I had tried to tell them several times. I actually invited that guy. He almost came in, the guy that ran it, and and I was telling him, and he's normally a really nice guy, but he had these young girls on there that had no experience in anything in life, right? And they're talking about Quaaludes, and this one girl says that it takes 7 hours for a Quaalude to hit, and I've done Quaaludes, right? And I've gotten screwed up. I mean, you take one of those and you got a few shots of vodka or whatever, you're going to be down in about 15, 20 minutes.
I know, and they were like, that's not roofies. She's
Right.
It's like, no, you're confused about how many different substances over time, and added into the fact that both sides of the equation often are getting, drunk on purpose. Right. It has nothing to do with, but certainly dosing people.
Right, exactly. And see now what you saw. Well, see now what you saw in there is a really, really bad example of what MRAs could be, or whatever in that.
What about you could give someone a huge dose of Benadryl? It's not really, it might not be as magically you black out as automatically. Anyway, whatever. Hey, well, tell me this. So I think this relates. So you guys probably have seen, Trick, or is it Track, Palin, that punched his girlfriend, and then Palin comes out. She
blames Obama.
She basically blames Obama, but also, what was making me think about it now is she pulled out this hero trope, right? He was over there fighting in the war, and now we're realizing people get PTSD.
He was fighting for you, America. And everyone starts clapping.
About him not getting respect, as a
made him
veteran.
sound like Rocky then.
While you are,
for you, America.
Yeah.
No, that's literally what she said. He was fighting for you, America, and I was like, oh
that's
my
her.
God.
But see, this is how the associational logic goes. Boom, associate him with the hero class.
Yeah.
Right. I see that.
And I would say, yeah, you know what? Maybe he did get PTSD and needs treatment, and maybe he was a hero in the war. It's not an excuse when you're explaining that he hit his wife. It probably should be more like, he's got problems. He's a good person. He defended your country before, but we need to put him into a getting over your problem area.
I'm sorry. That's like me. There's no excuse for hitting a woman. I'm sorry, there just isn't.
Well, obviously.
If you got PTSD,
and yet we have somebody that,
yes, it just means PTSD. The law is the law. If you hit somebody, fucking idiots. Not you. I mean.
She's a valued Republican, and she is saying this.
I'm glad she is, because that means I'm glad she's a valued Republican, because that means she's gonna get fucking, do Donald Trump more fucking hate because she's opening her mouth. Haven't Republicans learned the reason why John McCain was so trounced by Obama is the fact that they elected this dumb bitch from Alaska in the first place to be vice president? I mean, fuck's sake. Who the fuck would want that dumb shit who can't even fucking coherently make a sentence to fucking endorse you? That's like being endorsed by the marshmallow guy out of fucking Ghost. Like, what the fuck? So stupid. And Americans like, yay! And I'm like, what? You know?
Well,
Yeah,
it's not
Let's
just
get Trump in
Sarah,
there.
it's not just Sarah Palin that's buying this kind of thinking. I mean, I would argue the reason she can even get away saying it on TV is because, yeah, there really is all kinds of rape apology, domestic abuse apology, thoughts that are just right there ready to, yeah, you could say it on the TV. I wouldn't. I'd feel embarrassed. That's me. That's me and a lot of people I know. But the fact that you could say that at all is, I mean, she couldn't have gone up there and said, well, at least he didn't shoot a nigger. That wouldn't be okay.
No, she,
right?
You know
but he
what?
could beat a woman, punch her in the eye, and his
hold on a minute, right? I bet you in time.
That shows our society is tolerant of domestic abuse.
I bet you in time that will become the norm in America to say nigger. Like,
actually,
like a politician, fucking nigger. It's like,
actually,
yeah, nigger.
I doubt that.
What?
Actually, I think
we can say the words so that we're not like censored, but don't abuse it.
It's bizarre.
No. There's a difference between the N-word and the N-word in Ebonics.
No, there isn't. They both mean the same shit. Look. Just because Americans want to trenderize it, right? It's a derogatory term. Okay, I'm using it because I are black. Okay, I can get away with saying it, even though you can't see me. But
see, I think
how do we know you're black though? We don't
know. Because God said.
You are not
He's as black as bad jazz.
He's been around
you
for a
kind of
while.
sound white to me.
Look, hold on. It's in the Bible. Get shit straight, okay?
You kind of sound white.
It says in the Bible.
He's trans-race.
Stars is black.
I'm trans.
It says it in the Bible.
Like I'm black.
It's because he's black, mate. He's fucking in it.
Because I is black. There you go. I'm doing a whole like fucking. What's that guy's name?
Ali G.
Yeah, Ali G. Because I is black, bitch. Anyway,
Kent Hovind has talked recently since he's got out of jail. I've been subscribed to him. He actually mentioned when he was on Ali G, and he admitted that he was totally fooled by it. He had a sense of humor about it, actually. He brought it up. He was like, and I thought this guy was just crazy, but evidently it was satire. And 2 months later, my son was like, Dad, it's Sasha Baron Cohen.
Did they actually?
It's okay to have a sense of humor about it now.
Did they actually find out who left the floater in the toilet?
I think that was Kent.
That must have been, I think. He's the one who just kept carrying on with it.
Anybody that hasn't seen that, you should. That was a great clip.
That's funny.
The floater.
And it wasn't just Kent. There were a couple, kind of can't get the joke atheists as well. I mean, and they're all like. It's just so funny because they think they're with an idiot, and so they're treating him like an idiot, and really he's like 5 steps ahead of them. It's a pretty funny.
Well, you know what? I've met a lot of stupid atheists as well. I will say that for the record. I've met a lot of atheists who were so up their own ass who were fucking complete idiots.
They're all trying to explain to him. He misunderstands Homo sapien as homo, and he says there's nothing wrong with them, but I just want you to know I'm not one of them. And,
a lot of them
we're trying to explain. No, you're misunderstanding. Homo sapiens isn't that.
That's class.
A lot of them is really smart.
Are you talking about the ones? But when you're talking about dumb atheists, are you talking about the ones who are adequately like experts in the field of it?
Well, you can't be an expert in saying that I don't believe something. That's not.
No, I'm talking about like when it comes to scientific discussions.
Yeah, but science isn't the same as saying to somebody that I don't believe in God. They are not the same field of expertise. If I say to you, my ice cream making skills are better than your ice cream making skills. Listen very clearly. That's a discussion on science, right? Because it's something that we can both understand as objective. Ice cream. if we go to the realms of because I make good ice cream, therefore my flavor of ice cream is better than your flavor of ice cream, that's an opinion. There's a big difference there. So when an atheist is arguing with a theist about whether God exists or not, remember one
No,
thing.
I'm not talking about like God. I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about a scientific discussion.
Yeah, well, being an atheist has nothing to do with science.
You could.
Well, actually,
There are scientists who are smarter than atheists. Scientists who are not atheists.
Yeah, I mean, the guy.
I'm aware of it, but
the guy
I'm talking
who
about
the MRI machine was a fucking young Earth creationist. That says it all, like literally.
Oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that little tidbit. But go ahead, Chris. What are you trying to say?
I was going to say like I'm assuming that the ones you say are dumb are those who like in a conversation discuss evolution, way of creationists, and like do it poorly. Like myself,
There are people who do it poorly. Like there's this thing about group selection that has been going on with like Thunderfoot and group selection theory on evolution. Like natural selection does not select species, does not select populations, but they act as if species that get along better with each other therefore are able to survive better. But that's completely false.
Thunderfoot isn't an evolutionary biologist.
No, the word evolution only in physics describes motion. That's it.
Yeah, like
it doesn't care.
Yeah, like
exactly what Thingy just said. I apologize. What's your name there? I need to. Exactly what Farzan? Did I say your name correctly?
Yeah.
Exactly what Farzan just said. Oh, look, this group of species get along. Yeah, because they eat each other. It just means that there's a lot of them together in the same space. That's all. It doesn't mean that they like each other. It just means that there's plenty of food. Because we actually eat each other. That's the point.
Well, I thought the context was not them being stupid. Well, anyway, it's a bigger subject. But with the Ollie G thing, it's just that they're just as gullible as the young Earth creationists, which is not their fault. They went on a show and they didn't know they were being punked a little bit, and he's really good at it. On the other hand, he's so extreme in what he's pretending to be that it's like you look gullible to believe he's serious.
Remember the one with he did with Buzz Aldrin?
Yeah. Called him Buzz Lightyear at the end.
So cringeworthy. It was played so perfectly, but it's painful to watch. It's fucking brilliant. And Buzz Aldrin doesn't have a clue what the fuck is going on. It's amazing.
No, well, that's the beauty of trolling people. The best way to troll someone is to make them believe that you're actually like not trolling them.
Well, I think with some people that you actually interviewed, they were that high up in the scale of life that they'd never expected somebody to actually. Buzz Aldrin would never expect a troll to come and ask him bullshit questions.
Exactly. That's it.
Did you ever see Buzz Aldrin deck that guy that said?
Yeah. He didn't go to the moon. It's like, psh, you gotta do.
that just proved that
Listen,
why would you get punched?
You know what he should have said after he knocked them out? He should have said, "If I didn't go to the moon, well, at least you've been to the stars."
That's it. Drop it on the Buzz.
I can't remember who said it, but it's a great line. He said the only way that could be improved is if instead of hitting him, he'd turned around and caved his head in with a piece of moon rock.
I know a little bit of violence was hard not to approve of.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes
that's hero worship.
Yeah, sometimes punching someone in the face is the best.
Hero worship.
You know what? It would have been.
If it was someone else besides Buzz Aldrin, yeah, and I think he's a great pilot, blah, 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 yeah, that probably is. Yeah, because I don't really think it's okay to clock a guy that's an idiot.
The only way that would have got better if it was...
but that's like fucking going up to Sherpa Tenzin and saying, do you know what I mean? Fucking Everest, nah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, but it would have been
also,
better.
there's the element of, I think 70-years should probably be able to punch any 20-year-olds that they want, really.
If they manage to do it.
That should be a law.
Well, some 70-year-olds are ripped and could like knock a young person out.
Alright, anyway, to answer you, Chris, what I was saying before is... I've met a lot of dumb atheists. Not
Bionic dance.
You don't know. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. There you go. Wow. Yeah. nailhead. Thank you.
Well,
Some of the shit they come out with is like, are you for real? Like, really?
Well, I think some of the people that are atheists have adopted what they think of as science as their religion and their dogma, and I consider that the stupid thing.
Yep.
I kind of have a problem when people say that.
How?
That kind of...
What's your problem, Chris? Come on.
It's only, like... It's in line with, like, when some Christians say that, oh, you think of science as your religion.
Yeah,
but some people think...
Like, that's a pet peeve of mine. Like, if that... Like, science is not even a friggin' religion. Like, it's a method. Sort of... method. It's like...
Well, I don't think actual science is their religion. I don't think that's possible. I think their idea of science and a bunch of conclusions... They think this science is a bunch of conclusions, things we now know, not things we're figuring out more about all the time, which is what science really is, but things we already know. And that's, I mean,
that's the dogmatic.
Philosophically, it's the least dogmatic, and yes, I relate dogmatism to the religion.
Okay, but they could just be mistaken.
No, they're not. They're literally.
How do you know that?
Because I used to be one. I used to be one of them group-thinking fucking idiots who used to go around going, well, everybody who's religious is a dick. I used to do that all the time. Ax Pyro. I used to do that shit. I used to make videos and destroy Christians all the time. But then when I sat back and read the dictionary again, for the longest time ever, I was like,
for example,
oh, that's that.
I'll give you an example, Chris.
That's my opinion.
The Big Bang.
Okay.
People talk about the Big Bang
as if it's
like
true.
It's a thing. Well, no, actually, the Big Bang has always had severe controversies. There's elements of the universe that we have noticed.
The Big Bang came
the theory
from
of the Big Bang certainly has a lot of, truth in it, in the sense that we've been looking into it. But in reality, I've seen it's not a known thing. It's not a go-to thing. You can't say because there was no God because it was the BigAng happened.
The Big Bang.
Because we don't even know that.
Well, it's the best model that we have. At this current stage in time, it's the best model that we have.
No, Chris,
right, exactly. So it's not something. The Big Bang came from the Bible. Do you understand? No, I disagree with that.
No,
it is the best theory at the moment.
Anyone who says that is a fucking retard.
It's the best theory.
The Bible is the reason for the Big Bang. That's a fucking crock. It's like saying, like...
Listen, dude, I'm no offense, right, but I'm better at science than you are.
No, but wait, I want to say something.
If you look up the scientists and where the Big Bang idea comes from... No, I'm not. I'm just telling you, dude. He said I'm wrong. I'm telling you, it's a factual fucking thing.
I
can't tell if you would.
I think everybody.
Okay, I can't tell if you're trolling me or not, especially when you said that.
I don't need to troll you.
Well, anyway, I want to answer what he actually.
That's kind of an outrageous claim.
It's not a claim. I'm telling you, it's a fact,
Was that part of your statement a troll statement or like?
I'm not trolling you. I'm telling you, it's a fact.
You know what? I want to say something. Hello.
No, that doesn't. Okay, well that's freaking stupid.
Or something.
Okay.
Yeah, the Big Bang's a decent theory, but it is not. It has a lot of problems and holes in it, such that you don't pull this out like the theory of evolution or, Newton's laws of gravitation, and we've tested this, and we know this, or even quantum mechanics. And yet, I've seen atheists do this in the sandwich various cases, and it's just one example. They're not taking it as the best theory. They don't realize there's huge holes and controversies.
Yes,
it's a major thing to work on.
Okay, there are holes. I never I don't think I denied that. I said that this is the best. Okay, how did I say that? I said
you said there were holes, and it's the best thing, and I'm telling you, I'm talking about there's atheists out there that use it as though it's a known thing. Like it's a proven, understand thing, this Big Bang. And it really isn't. I mean, the expansion makes no sense. I had
I think it's the
astronomer I was working with pointed that out. How did the expansion happen? It's all in a point, that means it's in a black hole, basically. How the hell is it supposed to explode all of a sudden? And I frankly think it probably didn't. I think it's more likely the universe just expands forever and falls into black holes and just churns like that.
Okay, but do you have a model to back that up? Do you have, like...
No physicists do. This is something I keep up with physics to do. I'm not making my own theory. Well, no, I thought of that idea a long time ago, but right now, yes, there is that approach.
That's a competing model at this point in time. Like,
well,
it's when I was in school.
The competing model that's starting right now is this holographic information theory, which part of it would be that we might be in a black hole. A black hole might be the creation, and inside that black hole, it has that random roll of dice where the physics in there is even different. And the edge of our universe is actually the edge of the black hole we're in.
If that is the case, then that's great. That's super. That's fantastic. But until it is like there's consensus, and people can not only a consensus, but we can prove that this theory is applicable.
Until then, what?
Applied.
Well, we can only view the universe from one point in space, really. So,
yes.
So to be able to create a theory for the creation of the universe from a viewpoint that is basically a keyhole into a room.
Wouldn't it be right to say, like...
I don't see the problem with that.
No, it's even worse.
Would it be right to say that the universe is not infinite and that there's a limited amount of energy as opposed to an unlimited amount of energy?
No.
I mean, those are some of the tenets of the Big Bang Theory. You would say no?
No, the problem with that is you got to understand the problem we face is a paradox. We don't know. We can only assume. We don't know. That's why physics doesn't work. We have two basic physics at the moment. One is Newtonian, and the other one is quantum mechanics. They don't like each other. The reason why they don't like each other because the very, very big, right? The very big, like planets and shit, make perfect sense. Newtonian physics or Einstein, whatever you want to call it. That makes perfect sense in the universe that we observe. But then if we look at atoms, it literally breaks the Newtonian side of stuff because there's no such thing as gravity when you look at subatomic particles. We don't even know what to call it. In fact, we donate it with a little g. So there's two G's in physics. There's a big G, which is Newtonian physics, and there's a little g, which means what the fuck. Yeah, so we're basically in a conundrum as human beings.
That just means that I mean different rules apply to different scales of
yes, we already
You go to the very small.
No, hold on. We already know this, but they don't like each other. Okay. If you apply small physics, so to speak,
it doesn't work for big objects.
Yeah, and why is that? Because it should. We live in the same space. We live in the same time. It should work.
Is to find out why rather than to argue about it.
No, when we do, what do you think happens next at that point?
Well, I mean,
honestly, think about this. This is a real question, Hook. Think about it. If we can combine these two aspects of how we observe the universe, what do you think happens next to the human race? Yeah, I would like a cup of coffee too. Just saying.
You can't hear me, my head's over the mic.
I'd love coffee.
No, we can. Even though you got your hand over it. We literally did. I want a cup of coffee. But anyway, apart from the cup of coffee, the point is, if we combine these two things together, we become God in the sense of how the universe works, because we can literally do anything we want at that point. I'm not even joking. Backwards, forwards in time, make our own time. The universe is not bizarre.
How do you know we can go backwards in time or forwards in time?
Because time is only relative.
Well, we're always going forwards in time.
We can go forward in time. We've always been able to do that.
Yeah, but if we can go forward, then there's always a backwards.
Here's the thing. So I don't know if we're going to keep talking about the science side of things. Actually,
we lost
Kevin. we lost Kevin. I wanted to talk. We were kind of have conversation to continue. I think on these other issues that I think we're getting really digging into some interesting stuff. And I disagree strongly with you, Quintica, but I think I think you're taking part. I mean, I think it's a going forward kind of thing. Like, I would like to discuss this simple idea about patriarchy being traditional, just a word for traditionalism. I'd like to dig into that more, because I think that's straightforward. That explains it all. They say, there is no patriarchy. Well, they're just talking about traditional ideas. Yeah, there is traditionalism.
Okay, but they're kind of sensationalizing like a word that's a term that's kind of outdated to some degree. Like, they should use a different term. Like, it's like using a term from the Middle Ages, like thou or thee, to describe like a concept in today's
patriarchy.
Don't fuck with my English, you bitch. Just saying.
You can have your English.
Hey, we're celebrating 400 years of Shakespeare. Don't fuck around. Just saying.
Shakespeare.
And it's thou. Just saying.
Well, see,
thou art.
Thou art.
Anyway, that sounds to me like a one-sentence proof that there is such a thing as patriarchy. And whether you're for it or against it, then we could get into that. You say it's required by normative biology.
But it also gets to a point when like people like overuse the term to a certain degree, where it's just
the word
it sounds freaking to the like when radical feminists use it.
Which
like,
word?
Patriarchy.
Okay.
Well,
Like
see,
but I don't really care about that until we determine whether it's a real thing or not. I'm saying it is a synonym for traditionalism, with a focus on gender roles and traditionalism, noticing that in every echelon, the men take control. Between echelons, no. There's plenty of women outrank men in the whole...
Yeah,
it's traditionalism. So let's just admit it exists, first of all, because I hear a lot of the Thunderfoot and the commenters of that part of the YouTube version of this debate. Patriarchy doesn't exist. It's not a thing.
No, but there's plenty of men being suppressed by men. Do you know what I mean? To suggest there's a patriarchy means that all men are above all women, which just isn't the case.
It doesn't mean that. It never has meant that. It didn't mean that. You think it means it? Okay, so the idea of patriarchy, it means that a plumber outranks the queen. That's what you think it's saying. Maybe you misunderstood what it's saying.
No, I misunderstand how it's been used, maybe. Because whenever it's used against a man by a woman, right? It's regardless of that man's status.
But that's different from
the patriarchy, right? So patriarchy is gender specific, right? Which means all men are part of the patriarchy. That's how it is used.
No, not really. No, a matriarchy or a patriarchy have people of sex in them.
Well, I mean, patriarchy and I think like the main sense of the word also means that older males have a sort of are above younger males, kind of like how respect your elders kind of thing.
Because really, it's a part of traditionalism. So it's all of these old school ideas about who's the good people and who's the bad people.
Okay, then just say traditionalism at that point.
Why? Why do I have to? Why? Why?
Because it's not an archaic word. Because
it's not an archaic word at all.
No, but the queen is higher up than a plumber, therefore there is no patriarchy.
Okay, let me ask. Okay. Well, let me ask you something.
That's not what patriarchy means.
Okay. Well, let me give you an example. Is you referring to someone as a negus, is that strange to you? And does that make any sense?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to help see if there's a problem here of why Indifferent Sky can't talk.
He's muted.
Give us time to Google niggas.
Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, what the? She just muted again.
But she's in control, I guess. So.
Right. I don't want it open just all the time because that would be rude, I think.
Oh, there's a female in here too.
But anyway, back to this thing. Patriarchy.
Down with the women.
It never has been about the idea that a plumber would outrank the queen. Never. Nobody. It's never been. That's not at all. It does not mean that every man outranks every woman. It's never meant that. It's not. It's just not on the table that could be. That is a definition invented by people that want to deny that patriarchy is a thing. And I'm telling you, it's simpler. Don't get confused about men this and gender that. It's traditionalism. It's about traditionalism, and the reason patriarchy.
Then use traditionalism.
No,
like
you tell me what word to use.
Why do you want?
I'm about to tell you the reason.
Communication.
I am telling you the reason. Let me finish telling you the reason I'll continue to use the word patriarchy, because there's a lot of aspects to traditionalism. You don't just. It's not. You can't talk about all of it at once. The patriarchy version of that concept is pointing out that in a class-based society like we've always had, the men are in control in every echelon. In their own echelon. There is that bias. It does not require, you can have a queen at the top, and that could still be true, that in the echelons, she's only queen because there was no guy to do it.
But then that still rules out the fact, if it was a proper patriarchy, then the queen would not be allowed to be the head. It would then go to the next male in line, regardless of...
Proper, right. So if it was
so therefore it's not a patriarchy.
And that is true in history. There's many places that would not have queens, period, except for as the wife of the king.
Well, see, there's two. I think. See, here's the thing, right? Now, I'm not big on the social justice warrior thing. I don't pay attention to it. I think Gamergate, you can either go through the gate or you can game, right? It's what I see, right? But there's two types of patriarchy. There's the dictionary definition, and there's the way it's used. The way it's used is either to defend or to attack a man, right, for whatever reason.
But this is what I'm saying about associational stuff. I mean, it's great to talk about how a word is used, but if you really want to do that, you might as well write down the definition those people are using, because the dictionary definition of, for example, if we could make a good one for feminism, which I think there is such a thing, you might not find it in the dictionary, but I do believe there is such a definition, that's a word in itself. How a bunch of feminists or people that call themselves feminists are behaving, you could compare that with the definition and say, are they really activists? Are they just using this? Because people will use all kinds of things. You're fat.
Well, I prefer
an argument. They go, you're fat. You know, it doesn't.
Okay, but I think you're kind of like focusing on different aspects of like I think you're like taking like some things of what people are saying and kind of like try and make it look silly to some degree, which
Hero, I think
whatever.
I
want technical definitions for all these terms. I'm tired of basing the definitions based on how the people that like the words act. Fuck that. That's
okay, but for communication purposes, you need to have a word that is relatable to everyone. Like it's like there are ancient terms for other.
Patriarchy is not an ancient term. I mean, then a whole bunch of other words are as well.
Well, it's kind of an archaic
like half.
I don't think there's
most words in your dictionary.
I would have to look up when patriarchy, the word itself.
Do we need to quibble over the definition of patriarchy?
It's like a 17th
why don't we just ask Piro what he means by patriarchy?
Strictly speaking.
Can you hear me?
I just have said, yeah. I was just saying, it's a word for traditionalism.
Okay,
Activists
so it's not
traditionalism. We hate traditionalism. You guys all hate traditionalism. We've drugged you along into the future, so you might think you're into it now, but really we could go back 50 years and you wouldn't like the traditionalism any more than the people that actually did something about it 50 years ago.
To me, the important distinction here is the type of patriarchy that is like systemic, institutional, or something that just happens to be incidental. Because that's the type of patriarchy that I think you're observing, which I think is incidental. It's not something that's systemic, it's something that's just happenstance, right? It just so happens that men tend to be more dominant personality-wise, and that's why they tend to get those leadership positions, because people perceive them as leaders because they act like leaders. Women tend to act a little more subservient, but that's not because of some institutionalized...
Hey, dude, that's why the alpha male is under attack by us social justice warriors, because we're fucking sick of having them as our leaders because they're idiots and they want to go fight a war and then there's going to be candy and they're just fucking idiots. And the fact that people respond to that as sign of a leader, that's a problem. Okay, if you're gonna
wait, are you a social justice warrior now?
If you're not thinking that way,
He's
I'm
always
a social
been one.
justice peace activist.
Well, you're doing
I'm
a
a
bad
social
job.
justice
If
peace
you really are a
activist.
social justice warrior, you're doing a shitty job. You sound no different from the Tumblr feminists at this point. Well, radical feminists.
So, I mean,
Tumblr.
See
Puro,
what I'm talking
the
about?
way I see
Okay, what does
this,
feminism mean? Well, whatever Tumblr's doing. Fuck that. That's not how we define
Puro, I
women.
think
Right now, though, dude.
the problem here, it's very similar to what's going on with the Oscars and the boycott of the Oscars, right? People
Well, I'm getting a little
think,
excited. I
people
think I have
think,
a simple point.
people
The simple
think,
point is there is such a thing as traditionalism, right, you guys? There's traditionalism. Will you grant me that
No,
exists?
there isn't. No, there isn't.
There isn't such a thing as
No, there
traditionalism.
isn't such a thing.
Conservatism is
Okay, no, I'm serious. That's what my point was when I was talking about testosterone. Now, all you guys know a little bit about martial arts, right?
No such thing as
I know, but
traditionalism. Wait.
That,
You don't get to go on a big tangent, right? Because I
Well,
don't
no,
see how you could
this
say
is-
there aren't
you know,
traditional
it-
beliefs. No, it's got to be some word game because obviously we all know there are traditional beliefs and there's people that fight for them.
there might be a
example, conservatives
tradition, but that
that's
doesn't mean that
part
people
of
are
their
trying to
game.
conform to tradition. That's the difference. You're suggesting that people are deliberately trying to conform to a tradition of men being in charge. That does not exist. I'm sorry.
Gender
It just
bias. Gender bias
Well,
is a better term, isn't it?
Okay, let's not confuse. I mean, the superset is traditionalism. Patriarchy's talking about an aspect, one facet of this, and possibly not enough of the aspects. Possibly it is confusing to people. So
And
I'm trying to clear it up.
Reduced, isn't it? Because
I'd like to be able to agree there are
feminism
traditional
words-
beliefs.
They've got ammunition in the way they're used, and you can't fucking get away from that. Like, I prefer the terms egalitarian, right, as opposed to feminist. And as far as patriarchy, I guess gender bias or gender equality. Do you know what I mean?
See, I don't see it as a bias. Okay, let's just, this is related, and I tried to mention this, but I got interrupted. But what's going on now with the Oscars, where people are crying racism because apparently there aren't enough black people being nominated for awards, right? So according to these people, it seems like they think that because black people comprise 13% of the population, therefore there should be 13% black people being nominated for Oscars, which is patently absurd. And when they don't see that same breakdown, they assume racism. Oh, it must be racism. It's ridiculous. It's the same thing with what's going on. When you look at what's going on and you see like predominantly males, in leadership positions, people assume, oh, there must be some institutionalized patriarchy going on, or some sort of gender bias, and that's absurd. That's not the reason. It's just
No, it's
incidental.
not like that. That's ridiculous.
It's incidental.
Well, look, I don't think that's fair. That's not a fair.
Where is the evidence that people
history.
are deliberately going
We're obviously
out of their way?
coming out of patriarchy, right? Like when women weren't allowed to vote, you got to call that a patriarchy because the power it's a democracy and only men had that power. So that's definitely. Then suddenly they get the right to vote. So that's it. That's the only aspect. Social aspect. Not every social aspect is in remedy by the law. It takes time and conversation for it to work out. So I think if you look at history, we know we're coming from a very patriarchal.
Yeah, times have changed, Bureau. Times have changed. We're long past days where suffrage was. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, one of the things that really gets on my nerves about these conversations is the people that want to argue against, like what Vic is doing here, what he's arguing, is like you don't acknowledge or you refuse to acknowledge that our biases are unconscious for the most fucking part. And you will not acknowledge these unconscious biases, and women have them too, and there's study after study, and there's a new study now that with physics professors, when they were given exams, the women professors also were very biased against, actually they were more biased against female names on the papers. And they've done this with physics exams, and they've done it with STEM applications and resumes for jobs. So, and those are just two studies I'm throwing out there. You can Google them. But this shit is unconscious. And when you have 70% of white males that are voting for the Oscars, this is all very unconscious what they're doing. And
you're already concluding that there is racism going on here. Why? Where is your evidence of that?
Well, first of all, I think there is reason to expect percentage kinds of results.
Look. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, I totally acknowledge that there are certain biases and preconceptions, right, against black people, and sometimes I think it's warranted. It's totally rational to do it. It might be unfair, might catch a lot of people in the net, right, that shouldn't really be in the net, but it's totally rational to do it. Okay?
No, what about a positive bias toward people you relate to? So when you have 70% of white males maybe identifying with certain types of media and culture, that's a pro-bias. It's not an anti-bias.
No, but anytime there's
let me finish the point that I was driving at.
A strong black character, it has won the fucking Oscar, whether it was Last King of Scotland or 12 Years a Slave, or anytime there's been a strong black role that year, it has been tipped and bounced straight into the fucking Oscars. So you can't say it's a bias. And then you name one person that you think should have. I read a Huffington Post article on people of color who should have been nominated for the Oscars. Right.
The problem is that this type of mindset never happens in the other direction. Like if you ever saw a white person who was totally qualified, who was ignored or passed up for an opportunity, nobody immediately leaps to the conclusion that he was denied that because he was white, because of racism. But whenever it happens to a black person, people immediately pull the race card. It's ridiculous.
What explains that is history, and you don't like history, or you think 50 years ago is a long time.
Times change. Why don't we just talk about
medieval? They don't change from nothing. They don't just out of nowhere.
Why don't we keep referring back to the way things were during medieval times?
I'm talking. Times change. They evolve. Okay, they're related. How it is now is related to yesterday, and so on back billions of years.
We are so beyond those days, it's not even fun. I'm not saying it doesn't exist anymore, but it doesn't exist to the degree that
beyond what days where women couldn't vote, or
but if we're talking about something,
the days of apartheid, the days of
started to see women doctors and stuff in this country in any kind of number. What are you talking about? I, in my lifetime, have seen this continue to evolve.
I'm not saying it
back in the 60s it wasn't that way.
Racism and prejudices will always exist, but they don't exist to the degree that you guys are suggesting. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I just don't see the evidence of that.
Yeah.
Now, look. Now, as what I was going to say.
You're going to have to be more specific because I don't think.
Well, like the Oscars, for instance.
To what degree it is.
Like the Oscars, for instance.
Well, I tried to put in my idea on the Oscars, which is that I think the Oscars is a big piece of shit. Day one, all of the values. They very rarely choose the best movie anyway. So I'm on board with trashing the Oscars because I'd like them to die off.
Hold on. Let me explain the difference where I think sometimes having these prejudices is rational, right? So, for instance, and sometimes it can, it can be more malicious, and sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's totally unwarranted. So, when you're walking,
prejudice is sometimes rational.
I'll give you an example.
Well, we've given before.
I'm gonna instead of using blacks because that seems to just set people off. I'm gonna just use Asians or something, right? Imagine you live in a neighborhood and there's this gang of triads or whatever, the Chinese gang, whatever, Asian gang, and they're running around terrorizing people, stealing bicycles, stealing shit from people, and all of a sudden you see this Asian man in a hoodie, or this young Asian person wearing a hoodie, walking suspiciously between houses, looking in windows, right? And he fits the profile of all these other people who have, been walking through that town and causing chaos, right? Stealing from houses, stealing bikes, all young Asian men predominantly, right? Doesn't it make sense to be a little bit more wary?
So wait, let me get the thing right. So we're in this town. Okay, so we're in this town, and the only criminals is this gang of Asians at that point, or all the criminals are
predominantly.
Asian, happens to
mostly, yeah.
Mostly doesn't cut it because mostly means you just got to look out for yourself. Well, no, in a city, you pretty much got to look out for yourself, all the time. not just because there's crime this week. There's always that. And no, so I don't think you can make your argument with the predominantly. It has to be more of a fantasy where only Asian.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
No, it's ridiculous for you to want to pick out Asians when there's
you're living in an idealistic world, right?
No, you are, because you want to trust somebody. No, you're idealistic. I don't want to trust anybody. I don't trust anybody walking out in the streets at night in the city.
But
you want to be able to trust your white brother.
You can't apply your resources equally. You don't have that. You don't have all the resources all the time to give everyone equal scrutiny. So you have to discriminate, and you discriminate based on common sense things, characteristics, like statistics. Yeah, like statistics, right? If like 99% of the crime being committed in this particular neighborhood is being committed by young Asian men, right? It stands to reason that, you know, if this person is looking a little bit suspicious and there's this other person who isn't Asian and is a white guy or a black guy or something who tends to be, you know, law-abiding citizen,
wait,
right?
So 10% white criminals, it makes sense to let them go, too.
It makes sense to look at that Asian person with slightly more scrutiny. Be a little more wary of that person because of the track record, because of the history.
No, I would have to back up.
That's not bigoted,
this, right? If it was an Asian community and the crime was committed by Asians, and that's just.
I didn't say it was an Asian community. I didn't say it was an Asian community.
Let me finish.
Let me finish. Victimized.
If it was a community where there was an average where it was equally white, black, Asian, Muslim, and all the crime was committed by Asians, then you could say that an Asian person would stand out, profiled, because the crimes committed by Asians. But you've got a comparison in that community, right?
Okay, so you're acknowledging that in certain situations, profiling based on ethnicity or race is warranted and rational.
Almost definitely, mate. I come from the UK.
Right, but it also leads to accidental deaths. So
yeah,
maybe it's not a good idea.
Yeah,
maybe you should judge it based by the results, since it doesn't actually work.
And if you don't profile at all based on it,
profiling didn't stop the crime, and
it's not perfect.
It wasn't.
Nobody's saying that it's perfect.
Well, okay, so I don't like to use it. I think there's better ways.
It's more efficient than your alternative, which is to not profile based on ethnicity or race at all.
I don't think.
I like how at first there's no racism, but now here's a big justification for profiling.
I never said there was no racism. You're putting words in my mouth. I specifically told you that there are instances of racism. There always will be racism. But what I'm describing, whether you want to call it race,
classifications, it's no race.
What I'm talking about right now, I don't know if you want to classify that as racism. If you want to call that racism, fine. Then I guess in certain cases racism is justified, in my opinion. I personally consider racism.
I think
in my opinion, racism is a person who hates people of a particular race, no matter what their character, no matter who they are, no matter how they behave. You just hate them for the color of their skin. And there are people like that, right?
I'm not trying to read people's mind. I'm sorry, my activism does not require me to read people's mind.
I mean, I'll judge white trash. If I see a trashy white person,
I am looking for systematic biases, inappropriate systematic biases.
Okay, well, yeah, explain why it's inappropriate.
I don't really care where it comes from. That's a matter of looking it up so we can figure out. Now, the only grain of truth in what you said is if somebody was. These three guys go rob a 7-Eleven, and now there's an all-point bulletin for 5'11" Asian men. Then you're looking for people that fit that description: tattoos, color clothes, everything. That would not be racist. But just saying, hey, all the crime here in L.A. It's 75% black people, so we'll just profile all black people. That's a big difference.
I didn't say you're just going to focus on black people. I'm saying that in some situations, giving a little more scrutiny to a particular ethnicity or race is warranted. Now,
I mean, that's kind of how the Israeli airport security kind of works. they do use race and religion as not well. I don't know if they use religion, but they use race and appearance and all that stuff as
they should.
I mean, like
'Cause
I'm
they
from
have
Iran.
common sense.
I have a friend who was from an Islamic country like Azerbaijan. It's a small country, and yeah, he spent a little more time at the airport than you might at the Israeli airport to get into Israel. But anyway, like I had a question to Pyro. Pyro, do you believe in reparations for slavery? That is like when it's not the people receiving the reparations are generations after the actual people who were enslaved.
I don't believe that cash reparations are function properly. I do believe that you can take reparative actions, however, and that we should do that. I think paying cash money out is a silly way to do it.
Do you think that because there's other countries and other groups that have done the same thing? For example, like Mongolians during their reign, they also they had slavery. Like there's slavery in many other groups. Do you think that that the weaker countries, like Mongolia, is obviously a poor country? Do you think that they owe the world something? They owe Europe something because they were a part of slavery?
I don't see it as an owing thing. I see it as I'm the person that I'm asking this question about. What do I think America, can do? I feel this is a question for people that want to make things right. If the Japanese want to apologize to the Chinese or the Koreans, which one was it they just did actually finally do?
The Koreans. The comfort women.
So that's up to them, right? And it's a totally different generations of people. Well, not actually. Some of the comfort women are still alive, I guess. So, but it's definitely not the same people in the Japanese government. So should they not do that? Yeah, I think there is a value of doing that kind of thing. And I think Tulsa, where you had this infamous Tulsa riot that nobody knows, yeah, the city of Tulsa could probably do something to repair, go maybe do some infrastructure in the neighborhoods that are all fucked up now. Because they certainly repressed a neighborhood that would have been vibrant by burning it down. So, yeah, they could repair that, but it's kind of up to them. No, I'm not going to go to Mongolia and tell them what to do. And also, things do become ancient enough that, what's the point? What can you really do? Is it,
I guess
the same government, in other words?
I mean, some groups are a little more scrutinized than others. Wouldn't you say that Americans, or white Americans, have kind of been scrutinized for the history of slavery more than Mongolians, or
Well, okay. First of all, a couple of things. One, we're not talking about the same governments over there in Mongolia, right? We're talking about this government, our institution that we're working with, and secondly, the Dutch started this kind of slave trade that everybody pretty much knew it was wrong, in the sense that the old justifications of slavery, like you read in the Bible, is the assumption that people go to war, the losing side, some of them get taken away to slavery, right? And that provided the justification, the might make right, and then you lost, and maybe you shouldn't have fought in the first place or whatever. Whereas going down to Africa and just kidnapping people, that actually was not really a part of the tradition of slavery, except for kind of having a war with, primitive people in Europe and then taking them back. So a lot like kidnapping, but mentally it was a different thing. And the Dutch actually started that.
They actually bought most of their slaves, not kidnapped them.
Yeah, they bought them for Africans. They did. They bought them for other Africans.
Right. So if you buy a person that was kidnapped, to you that separates you from the kidnapping.
No, I mean, Americans...
Or if a black person did it, it's a different institution than if a white person did the whole thing. No, oh God, who cares? Black people sold black people into the slave market. Yes. What's your point? That makes it okay. What is the point of that exactly? What does that free up? That white people aren't as bad as we thought?
When you said they kidnapped them, I just thought you were kidnapped.
Yes, those
No,
people.
but the treatments of blacks in America doesn't have to go as back as slavery. You can go back to the 50s, the 60s, 70s, even present day. Any reparation for the blacks is because they're treated like shit since and up until now. Would be what I would say as far as that was concerned.
I really wish that people would stop looking at the world, at least in modern society, through race-colored goggles. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's just gotten so absurd.
My goggles aren't race-colored. There's facts about race and about history and the way people are treated and stuff. It's not like, like this guy, I've seen a lot of people talk about, well, it was really blacks that were, there was these tribes getting rich,
No.
collect slaves, as if that matters. That makes us better off. Our role is better.
Okay, well.
Except for in the race war, it is, right? There's a little point for someone in a race war, but in the reality, it doesn't change the situation at all. Every culture has assholes and criminals and kidnappers available.
Yeah, but they don't all fit into the same demographics. Some have a higher predilection for crime. Certain cultures are more violent than others. They're not all equal. They're just not. In your idealistic world, they all are the same, but they're not. In reality, they're not.
I never said they were the same. That's an assumption you make. You get this flawed idea in your head, and you keep saying that. I never said that. I say the opposite. I do not say all people are the same.
Okay, well, then I think they should be treated differently. That's the difference, I guess, right? You think that when people behave differently, we should still treat them the same.
You could treat people differently. We could treat people differently, but when you're talking about social policy, it's what do you mean? I got to know what you mean.
See,
no, I don't think that
the
social system that we all have to pay into gets to be biased because of how it was last year.
See, the difference between us, I think, Piro, is that I'm more concerned with efficacy in the real world, and you seem to be more concerned with political correctness in an ideal world.
No, I think it's exactly the opposite. I'm talking about efficacy. How can we solve the problems in the world? How can we, upgrade some of these traditional ideas that none of us believe anymore, that are still ingrained in our society because history is a real thing?
But
I believe in efficacy entirely.
I want to give Pryor something. Like, he is right that there may be some sexism or racism, some tidbits left. But I agree with you, Vic, that, like, for the most part, like, as far as like the first world is concerned, we have
right. So there's a tidbit, but here, how long would it take me to go to YouTube right now and find a racist comment in a video? How long?
Among blacks or whites? Because I could find a racist comment among blacks.
See, there's your race war. I don't care. Both racists are racists that I don't like. You're the one that thinks it's still. Like, I'm defending black racists. No, how long would it take? If there's just a tidbit, then how come I could go find that instantly?
That's freedom of speech.
Yeah, you can't.
It wasn't freedom of speech. I said it's not. It's more than a tidbit.
I'll tell you right now. Look, here, I'll tell you right now.
There's a tidbit of oxygen in this country.
Look,
no, it's all over the fucking place. This oxygen.
Look, I don't really care. I mean, I will speak my mind. I don't care about political correctness. Honestly, I'm like, this is why I'm kind of like.
Probably argued against political correctness before you.
But this might come off as racist, but honestly, I notice patterns, right, that a lot of people aren't prepared to openly acknowledge. But I notice patterns, like, for instance, when I call up customer service and I hear that inner city twang voice, right? That jivey voice, that accent, right? More times than not, these people are either rude or incompetent or unnecessarily abrasive, okay?
Right,
and this isn't just me imagining it.
That doesn't happen to me. I know how to get along with the urban,
it's not having to do with getting
African Americans because I live. Yeah, it does. It does. You're subtracting your ability to have a conversation with the person that you already have attitudes about and you believe in profiling.
This isn't a confirmation bias.
I have no problems. No, it's not confirmation bias. It's your ability to have a conversation with that person, which is probably retarded by the fact that you have ideas, preconceived notions
from
their voice. Yeah,
so
people
you're
can pick up
assuming
on
it's my
that.
fault. That's the thing. You're assuming
No, it's both of your fault. You couldn't.
You
speak
are
to
burying your head in
assuming
the
it's her
sand.
fault. You're
You are
assuming
deliberate.
You're assuming it's the other person's fault on the phone. Is that a,
You are being willfully ignorant, dude. Willfully
No,
ignorant.
the willful ignorance
you just blamed a person that isn't even here on the phone. In fact, a whole group of patterned people, and that's okay.
How can
but I
you
can't say
deny
maybe some of the
that
responsibility is yours.
Look, I know a
Why
lot
is
of
that
black.
wrong?
I know a lot of black people who are awesome people, great people, right? And I'm not a racist, right? I'm judging people just based on like what I see that it's a very high percentage of people within a certain subculture in the black community that behave a certain way,
But
in a
that's your
decadent,
experiences, and I have different
antisocial
experiences.
way. And this is the way they're raised. I don't know what we already know what the causes are, the root causes, but at some point we need to just say, look, enough is enough. We can't just keep tolerating this because of slavery and segregation.
No, judge a man by his actions, right? Yeah, I accept, right, that when I got on the phone to somebody, now in the UK it's generally India where you would get the help, the phone help, right? As soon as I hear an Indian voice, I'll initially go, okay, he's not going to understand my accent. It's going to take a little while longer to get the point across, right? But I'm not going to blame him for the actions or judge him based on the actions of what's happened before. That is when it becomes a bit prejudicial.
I'm going to form preconceptions based on a lot of factors.
Yeah, and you're going to
mainly the most
happen
important
too.
one is going to be by the way that they speak. Okay, but if and that's on the phone. But when I'm seeing them, a lot of it will be based on the way they're dressed, way they're walking, things like that. Because I notice patterns. Okay, and these aren't figments of my imagination. They exist, and I'm not the only one who observes them. Okay. So, a lot of very good, well-meaning people have the same exact observation. It's people like you who are focused on political correctness.
I'm not focused on political correctness. You know what, Vic? Fuck you. I heard the term political correctness back in 1991, and I was against it. And the reason I'm against it is because I'm against dogma. What?
But Pyro, that's just
traditionalism. What person has ever admitted? What person has ever?
I'm not politically correct.
No, okay, fine, Piro.
Okay, but Piro,
person who has ever admitted that they are politically correct. No one thinks that they're politically correct. So according to that logic, then nobody's politically correct. Nobody is a social justice warrior. My concerns are
not political correctness.
Okay, Piro, how do you know that you're not politically correct? Like you said it yourself that we all have.
Because I don't believe that concept fits. There is no such thing as politically correct.
Well,
Politics
that's your own,
is democracy. Democracy has multiple views. Excuse me, to survive. Let me answer. To survive, a democracy requires a multiplicity of political views to take part in a public debate so that an informed public can vote. Therefore, there cannot be a politically correct because we necessarily need a spectrum of political ideas for democracy to work. That's why I'm not a politically correct person. Do I line up with certain views? Yeah, political correct dogma is way better than the traditional dogma before it. It needs to go too, but it's a step in past this bullshit racism and sexism we had 50, 60, 100 years ago.
It's much like whatever sexism or racism that is present today is vastly different from whatever racism, sexism was in the past. I don't understand.
Well, the point is I don't get along with people because of trying to be politically correct. I don't even really bother trying to get along with people particularly.
Yeah,
and also another thing.
But Pierre, you could deny it all you want, just like you can deny that you're a social justice warrior. But it doesn't matter.
Did I deny that? I just said
eschewing that label doesn't automatically absolve you from.
I'm a peace activist, so I don't want to be called a warrior. But I also have said I was SJW enough, right? I'm fighting on this side of the battle. If you're going to bring it to battles, yeah.
When I talk about a person,
I'd rather not be a warrior, but
when I talk about a person who is politically correct or a social justice warrior,
throwing these labels at me, I don't call you a racist. I never have called you a racist. You say these things that are prone to being called racism, and all you do is keep throwing labels at me while you're complaining that people like me throw labels out.
Well, that's kind of like traditionalists.
But I don't care if you care. I'm not going to do it anyway
Piro, I'm trying to
You do
explain
it.
to
You
you.
are a label thrower, just like you accuse
No, listen.
justice warriors
I'll
of
use
being.
whatever term you prefer. It's irrelevant. My feelings about your position are exactly the same. Whatever you choose to label yourself, it doesn't matter. I'm trying to explain to you what I think.
But you're claiming my motivation is trying to match political correctness. But my politics predate political correctness even being a thing. Right?
When I think of a person who is politically correct or a social justice warrior, it's a person who is hypersensitive to, they have a persecution complex. They try to foist that on other people. It's like, oh, this person's being persecuted, this person's being oppressed. That type of hypersensitivity is what I associate with political correctness and social justice warrior mentality.
Right, but you don't want to deal with oppression or unfair bias. You think we got the system that's perfect or something. We don't want to deal with those unfair biases. How are we going to deal with what unfair biases do exist then?
I don't think, look, as I was saying before.
Right? There are none of those.
I'm not saying this. It's not perfect. Of course, there are certain biases.
What's a systematic bias that you know of in the world that you would like to change? Is there one? Is there anything in the world that you think?
Well, in the world is a big place. Why don't we stick to Why don't we stick to America? Why don't we stick to America?
Because I wasn't sure if you'd know of one in America. Okay, let's stick with America.
Obviously, the problem is much more apparent in Middle Eastern countries. Those are very oppressive countries. Okay, there are real systemic biases.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Let's talk about a Western country or whatever.
In America, honestly, I don't know. I mean, you're putting me on the spot. I'm not sure if there really is something that's systemic and institutional, some sort of social condition that is pervasive, that everybody unconsciously has, according to Indifferent Sky saying. I don't know what that is. I need to see evidence for it, right? And just these things that you're throwing out there, they're all incidental. To me, they seem incidental happenstance, and I can explain them away much more easily by, other methods than by appealing to racism or gender bias or anything like that. I mean, the fact that people just self-conform to different roles, that alone, I think, accounts for the discrepancy in these proportions. That alone does it. I don't think you need to invoke misogyny or systemic gender bias or racism.
But I don't really care.
See,
you go into the thoughts like it's a thought police thing. I really don't care about that. I am looking for materially measurable systematic biases. And sometimes it's difficult because, you're going, you know what, probably men and women, they should go to...
Okay, what would it take for you to conclude that there is no such systemic bias against women or black people? Overt, I mean, obviously there are going to be certain individuals who are obviously racist,
I think
biased,
our entire
misogynistic.
system is just barely past feudalism. Like, my view of history is totally different from yours. To me, I think 2,000 years of history is pretty accessible.
I don't know, man. I don't know where you're getting that from. Maybe it's because I was raised in a northern.
You don't know where I'm getting that I think history is important from?
No, history is certainly important, but you can't keep appealing. Like, what are we going to start appealing to medieval times? Too is what I mean. It's kind of silly. There comes a point when you have to just say, okay, that was in the past. This doesn't really apply anymore. Not nearly to the degree that you're putting all this focus on it. It doesn't warrant all this focus and attention that we see in the media. It just doesn't. I don't see the evidence.
Well, I think it does because my main issue is I do believe we can stop having wars. There's always going to be conflict, but that doesn't mean it has to be war, right? And I think these hateful, violent attitudes that people have towards each other is sort of linked to why they go kill each other a lot. So it's linked to me.
Well,
and is there a systematic bias? Yeah. I'm mostly concerned with very simple things at the moment, like let's not go in this next war, and
Well, let's
stick here and now. Let's build our infrastructure. Our roads are falling apart. Those are actually my main concerns. Now are kind of wig things.
Well, let me give you an example. Let me give you an idea of how I approach these issues. Like when somebody cries racism, here's how I approach it. So, if we're talking about a cop or someone who's walking through the streets and happens and someone claims that this person racially profiled the person, right? And it says this, he you know, did something against this person or ignored this person because of his race. I'm more likely to believe that when it's something when it comes to law enforcement or someone walking through the streets looking out for his own welfare, trying to be careful. But when it comes to something like, because there you can actually see the rationale where they might have done that. They might have these preconceptions about this person being violent or more predisposed to violence. But when it comes to something like the Oscars, I see no rational reason why someone would be biased against black people unless they are true overt racists, like those people who simply hate black people just for the color of their skin,
but
regardless of their behavior or performance.
Indifference Guys is posting in the chat these links about the teacher bias based on girl versus boy names, exact copies of the tests and stuff. So that seems like some sort of a systematic bias. I don't think those scientists were thinking, I want to keep women down. I want to flunk them. I hate them. No, it's how psychology works. You are primed with expectations based on the associations you make with something in your head. So if you have an association with a certain tone of voice, then it brings in all these other things that person had nothing to do with.
So you're saying that
when the gangbangers and Trayvon Martin, because now you're talking to Trayvon Martin on the phone. No, that person is not responsible for all those other associations. Then you make decisions based on all of those associations, and then you grade women with bias. So what's your explanation for these kinds of studies?
No, I'm not saying that you should
just
conclude.
Made up, right?
I'm not saying that you should conclude a certain thing, but you should certainly suspect, right? It might be rational to suspect a person of being this or that, right? Now, anyway, when it comes to the whole Oscars thing, because you're already on record saying that you think that racism might be an issue, or very likely could be an issue here with the Oscars, and that's the reason that they're not being nominated as much as white people.
Well, racism of this general idea of systematic bias, not racism of yours where you read someone's mind. I'm talking about systematic bias.
So what is your theory then? You're saying that there's some sort of systematic bias amongst these people that think that only white people should have awards?
I think the Oscars is biased towards idiocy. So to me, it's biased for or against. It doesn't rank as an issue. Right, I don't see why that's important. I do think it's important on science tests. I don't think it's important, but I think you'd rather me think.
Walk me through your
argue
thought process.
over the Oscars because all these idiots say that they think it's important or whatever.
Well, if you were in that
industry, it might be important enough to you to take up.
I want to know. I just want to know what your thought process is. Why do you align with these people who are crying racism?
I'm not. I just said
Oscars?
That it was ridiculous. You guys all said it's ridiculous, and I'm saying it is not prima facie ridiculous.
It's not impossible, but I think it's very highly unlikely.
And the people in the industry want to give a shit, then let them. I think Spike Lee probably knows more about whether it's racist than you. He actually has experiences with this. Industry.
Again,
what do you know about
this is what I'm saying. It's this bleeding heart. It's this bleeding heart. At your well-meaning.
Danny DeVito just said he was racist. He knows there's racism in him. He
but don't you
works in the industry.
Look,
you want them to go tell you what computing companies are like?
Look, you're well-meaning, right? You have a good intentions here. You have a good heart, obviously, right? But what I'm saying is that methodology, that way of looking at the world, right, is actually divisive.
Of thinking
it
that it is possible
problems.
What do you mean? You just said you agreed there could be racism there.
When you give people
the view that there could be racism is a problem.
When you provide cover for these people who are constantly
You're
crying
providing cover
wolf.
for a history of racism.
These people who are constantly crying foul, these hypersensitive people, you are actually exacerbating the problem. You're actually creating problems that previously didn't exist. You're creating divisions, and you don't even realize it. And this is why I don't. This is why I'm so vehemently opposed.
We liberals created racism. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No,
It
but
wasn't even there
we're
before.
in the process of repairing the divisions, right? And then you come along.
Is the problem with the liberals that we didn't realize we won? And we should be stopped now because we won?
The problem is that whatever progress we've made, all the progress that we've made in bridging that divide, right, and mending those, that divide, you then reopen it. No, you didn't. You reopen it by giving cover to these people who constantly cry racism over everything. They see racism everywhere they look, just like Anita Sarkeesian sees misogyny everywhere she looks.
This you see it nowhere you look. You like looking at the places where you think it's not, and then because where do you look and it does exist?
The problem is that you think you're helping, but you're not.
There is racism in the world. Where do you see
it?
It then?
Is counterproductive.
Where should we be focusing then? Those of us that think racism is still an issue somewhere, where should we be focused?
Well, at least when it comes
where should civil rights be?
How about you focus on the fact that 95% of violent crimes are being committed by... Why don't you focus on personal responsibility? Why don't you do that? Instead of focusing on blaming the system and looking past history on what caused the dominoes to start falling.
I do look at personal.
But your priorities.
You're the one that does it. You look at a group-based.
It's the priorities. It's the priorities. You put more focus on the system and everybody else than the individual who's perpetrating the crime or whatever. That's bad. Really, really bad.
I've lost track of what you're even trying to say. I don't focus on the Oscars type stuff. You brought it up.
If I were to mention any sort of statistic that like blacks commit 95% of the violent crimes in America, even though they represent only 13% of the population, you would undoubtedly start pointing to slavery and segregation and apartheid and all this stuff as the cause of it. Instead of focusing on personal responsibility, you won't let that go.
No, I would not do that. I would but except I didn't make that argument, so.
Okay. Well, then what would you say? When I talk about that statistic.
That isn't.
When I say that right now, black people.
Well, I think you gave an overinflated statistic, but that's beside the point. So I would not. What's the question? What am I supposed to be defending? Black people?
No, I'm saying, where do you think the focus should be when the statistics show that blacks are so grossly...
Well, you want to see that. I mean, really, if you go to those neighborhoods...
I want to see that?
If you go to those neighborhoods, go to the poor neighborhoods, like where those girls were kidnapped, and you go over there and you see if the black families and the white family, in that environment, you see what the ratio is, because when you're going to take the crime-causing statistics of a group of people that is poor and in dangerous places where they get trained to be criminals, and you're going to average that up with Kennebunkport, where the Bushes live, I don't think that's a very
because they've done studies as well where they take poor neighborhoods of people from like Cuban background or Asian background that happen to be poor, and the crime rates just aren't the same. They just aren't. You have to acknowledge that there's a really apparent and glaring cultural problem within the black community. You have to acknowledge that. And if you don't acknowledge that, Puro, then there's no hope at ever solving the problem.
I'm not so concerned with that kind of crime as I am with the bank fraud that cost us $1 trillion.
You see what I mean? Now you're deflecting.
So no, it's not deflection. I'm prioritizing. So how do we fix the culture that causes that? By focusing on black crime in the city.
I mean.
No, just stay out of the dangerous neighborhood, but you can't stay out of the banking system. So get your priorities right.
That has issues too. I mean, who says that we shouldn't fix that?
Well,
I'm just saying, identify the problem. Don't deny it.
99% of the banking crimes are committed by white people.
Don't deny the problem. That's all I'm saying. You can't deal with the problem if you deny the
crimes. Excuse me, your same argument. Granted, now, what's the problem with white people? Why are they doing all the banking crimes? What's the problem with our culture? There is a problem with our culture.
Because they happen to be the ones who are in charge of the banks. Because they happen to be the ones in charge of the banks. I mean, duh.
Happens,
right?
Yeah, and black people happen to be the ones
the people who aren't in charge of the banks?
No, well,
Black
here's the
people
thing.
happen to be the ones in crime-ridden neighborhoods.
No, see, here's the thing. If you're saying, right, that poor Asians and poor Cubans don't commit crimes the way that poor blacks do, then you have to accept and therefore point out that there is something else involved, right? Now, either you're saying that's race or it's something else, which could
Sounds
be
like he's saying
the
No, it's not. No, it's
slavery.
not race.
It's
No,
no, well, wait there, or it could be the fact that they were slaves. Could be the fact that we're fucking
Culture.
the culture. It
There
could
you
be
You're
go.
not saying it's
Wait
being
there.
No. Listen to me. Let me
be the
clarify
fact.
what I'm saying. Let me.
It could be the fact that they were discriminated against for years, ghettoized for years, and now they're in a situation where they're in a spiral of deprivation where they can't get out unless there's special circumstances. Do you know what I mean? What you would have to say is, right, in America, right, such and such percent it's blacks that do the crime, right? Well, in Indonesia it's not going to be blacks. In China it's not going to be blacks. But there is going to be groups that predominantly commit crime, right? So you look for the similarities, right? The similarities isn't race. It's obviously some kind of what's the word I'm going looking? It's either economic or historical.
Okay, so you're going to say it's
factor.
culture then, not genetic predisposition.
Yeah, look, culture
Okay.
is the problem here.
And
It's
where
not
does
anything
culture come from?
I don't
Then
personally look.
what's
There are people who are so-called race realists, and they think that certain races are just more, inclined to
culture
commit
come from?
violent crimes. But I don't believe that. I don't buy that.
Where
I
does
think it's
culture
purely
come from?
cultural.
Where does
No, wait, hold
culture
on.
come from? History? Historical events?
Yeah, right, but that's fine. So what? The problem is it's a problem, right?
Right.
Whatever the cause is, it's a problem, right?
I agree that
Doesn't
the
matter.
inner city crime is a problem.
It needs to be
I
dealt
believe
with.
black-on-black crime is also
No.
yes, those are
If the
problems.
culture has a problem in it, it needs to be fixed. There's no point denying it just to focus on
Well,
what
you like to
caused it.
focus on this inner city
This
thing.
isn't
I'd like
about
to
blame.
focus on
This isn't about blame. It's more about like identifying the root cause of the current cause of the problem, right?
Well, the
Fixing it.
cause
what's
for
the
black
cause
crime
of
is
the bank fraud? That's
So
what
the
I'd like
question
to know.
is,
What's
how
the
do
cause
we
of the bank
fix?
fraud not causing people to go to jail?
So
That sounds like a cultural thing to me. Because bank fraud, there's always criminals, fine, but when they
there's
don't
a
go to jail and they're
culture
given
of
money back,
bankers. There's a culture of bankers. I mean,
no, there's our culture where we did not punish bankers and instead we gave them the money they stole from us. We covered.
well, that was a reason for that, right? It's because we thought that would
Why
be
didn't
the
people go to
lesser
jail?
of two evils. It's
We
not
could have
because
given them
we
the money.
have.
Why didn't
It's
people
not
go
like
to jail?
it's not
Why
because
did no
we
one go
love.
to jail?
Pierre,
Why
it's not
did no one
because
go to
we.
jail?
It's not
It was a
because we
cultural
love
decision.
bankers. It's not because we
Why
love
did people not
bankers.
go
Holy
to
shit!
jail? Why did I'm asking you for a theory as to why nobody went to jail. We know there were crimes committed. Why did nobody go to jail?
I don't know the details of
Sounds
the
like
cases.
a cultural thing, whatever
Maybe
it is.
because they didn't. Maybe because they
cultural
effectively use loopholes within
You don't know the cases. But you notice patterns in people's voices and customer support, but this, not so important.
I don't deal with bankers, man. When the hell do I talk to a
deal with
banker? I don't think I've ever talked to a banker in my life.
my
Like, as in
God,
charge of a bank.
You don't own a house. You don't pay taxes and just had to recoup the $1 trillion of their loss because of their
No,
fraud.
I'm talking about
You're
the bankers
unaffected
in
by
charge.
bankers.
The ones who are in
If you
charge.
had to talk to a banker on the phone, maybe you would form a bias against them. But you
I don't see
don't.
how I don't. Maybe.
Well, do you
Yeah,
see
I
my
don't know.
point
Maybe
then,
there
that
is
I
a
think
culture of
I
bank.
think
I've
the
never
bank
heard that,
fraud
but
is kind of huge thing.
okay. But why are we talking about that? That you might be right. Okay, maybe there's a huge problem
Because
within
it's a priority
bankers.
that I would like to look at, and
Fine, but what does that have to do with the current
whites do it.
discussion?
So there must be a cultural problem.
What does that have to
for those
do?
whites that do it.
Fine. Does that negate the fact that there's a problem in the black culture? No. So why talk about it? Right.
Because what we can do is we can calculate the cost to us of these problems, and we can prioritize what we're most concerned with.
I think we can deal with them simultaneously.
I agree. I think we can also deal with them simultaneously. But when you say that it's a cultural thing and not a genetic predisposition, then what Huck said seems pretty pertinent, that their history of their culture.
Yeah, but you need to readily and openly acknowledge that there is a cultural problem there. If you don't accept that, then we can't fix it.
Accept that racism helped cause this problem. You won't accept that.
Of
I don't
course.
accept your thing.
I mean, duh, of course. Who wouldn't? Who would deny that? That's obvious.
So wait, you admit that racism has helped create the situation where blacks are committing more...
Of course, slavery and yeah, the systematic oppression of blacks back during the Jim Crow laws and all that stuff. Of course, that contributed, because then those parents, you know,
so your position really is that we just got rid of racism.
They weren't trusting. Then they raised their children to be distrustful of whites and stuff like that, and that led to this.
Okay, so when was the last
defiance and distrust of white people? But it's now a problem that needs to go away. Okay, fine. That's what caused it, but it's a problem now that needs.
What do you want to do about it?
It needs to be solved rather than go away.
The question is that you have to first acknowledge it, Piero, openly and honestly, and then we can hope we can have a chance at solving it, because we could talk about solutions. But a lot of people don't even want to talk. A lot of people. I'm not saying you specifically, because you seem to be at least open.
I think most black civil rights groups will acknowledge that there's a problem and that it's a cultural issue. I don't think that's the problem. It's it's how that's treated, and whether how the problem's dealt with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's treated as...
No, and the other important thing here, Piero, I mean, you tell me where you stand on this, but the other problem is that some people will acknowledge the problem, which I think you seem to be doing, but they won't acknowledge that it's the main problem. They will instead say the main problem is racism against current institutionalized racism against them. That's the main problem, and that's problematic too. The priorities
you just have a lot of ideas you choose to have, because that's not true. I've done a lot of activism and worked with a lot of civil rights oriented people. That's their primary thing, and my whole life, from the 80s, 90s, they were saying this. You ever heard the term black on black crime? Yeah, activists know about that. Just like people are pointing out the Muslims kill more Muslims.
Right.
Well, this is something people are kind of aware of. You guys...
I'll give you a no, I'm not in my own world.
Yeah, you are in your own world. No, there's a whole leftist theory about this that whole derives from, single parenthood. The welfare state itself actually has helped to, the way it's constructed, has helped to cause this problem. And there's plenty of conspiracy theories about how it exactly happened, the single parent situation and absentee father, because that was not always the case in the American black community till around the 60s.
Piero, so think about the level of scrutiny that we give, right? Whenever there's any sort of white on black incident in the news, there's immediately a national scandal erupts. Before the evidence is in, before they've even determined that there actually was racism involved, a lot of these people are immediately leaping to the conclusion that racism, including our president, including a lot of these pandering fucking liberals, progressives, right? You, on certain occasions, I've seen you do it, right?
Well, like Sandra Bland.
Wait, those incidents account for a drop in, even if those few instances actually were genuine racism, which they weren't. Like every single incident, every single prominent incident that scandal that's erupted in the past 3-4 years in the news, almost none of them have actually had anything to do with racism.
Vic, I could not convince
and those cases account for a drop in the bucket.
Hey, Vic,
and people ignore
accepting things. I could not convince you guys to admit that there is such a thing as traditional views and traditionalism. But I'm supposed to focus
I admit. Of course there are traditional views. I'm not denying that traditional views exist. What I'm saying is that I don't believe that people are trying to conform. Like there's a systemic thing to conform to traditional views, and that's why there's this patriarchy. I don't buy that. I don't accept that.
No, people honestly believe it, just like they were honestly racist. I'm supposed to say, hey, if you're honestly racist, fine. Hey, if you honestly think slavery is okay, well, okay then. We're trying to change the world, man, and that involves making people change their opinions about things.
Again, you could be right. Maybe I'm just completely wrong here. But the way I approach these questions is, I put myself in people's shoes, and I go, okay, if I was interviewing a man and a woman for a job, and they both have like the woman is even more qualified than the man. Am I going to choose the man just because he's a man over the woman? And I say, no, that's ridiculous. There's no reason for me to think that other people are going to think differently. So I assume that this is just preposterous. This is just...
So we both said we were practical minded. We both claim to do that. So let's just put it this way. You know, you say I should, for example, acknowledge that the African American culture in the U.S. is like the main problem in some domain. What domain is that? Are you saying the inner city violence? And is that what you're saying? And if is that your most important thing you think in this country? I mean, what is the important things you think that are going wrong or need to be fixed in this country?
The rampant crime among them?
Crime. Well, crime has been going down since the 90s. Maybe you didn't notice.
It's still grossly disproportionate. That needs to be fixed, right? They account for only 13% of the population
and crime has been going down. I mean, rapes are like a quarter of what they were 20 years ago.
It's still a huge problem, yet they're focusing on these issues, which is like what, one in like how many incidents? Like where there's a white on black incident.
I think that.
It's like such a minor non-issue, and that's what the focus is. And the thing is, there isn't equal scrutiny when it happens when a black cop kills a white guy. And that same week, when the Mike Brown incident happened, right, that same fucking week, there was a white guy or whatever came out of a convenience store, and he pulled out like a smartphone or something out of his pocket, and this black cop shot him dead. Same thing, right? And there was barely a peep about it.
I think America could probably stop race riots with one swift move by deporting Al Sharpton.
Hey, can we just take a little internet viral kind of thing? I spaced out a little bit enough to not know if this was you made me think of this. You weren't talking about this case, but you see that guy, the film of that guy that ran up to the cop, shot at the cop from outside the car, ran up, put his gun in there, and looked like he shot him a couple times more, and the cop ends up. Did any of you guys see that one? I think it was oh my God. Yeah, no, and this guy was he was screaming, you know, it was definitely a Muslim, you know, psychotic kind of thing. But the video's amazing. Cop in the car, nothing going on with this guy. Guy just runs up to the cop while he's stopped on the side of the road and starts shooting at him like from 5 feet away from the car. Then he goes over and puts his hand in the car, looks like he shot a couple more times, then he runs off, and the cop who was shot got out of there and chased him down and shot him dead. But anyway, it was pretty amazing. So that's what I was saying. It was just a viral thing. Like, you got to see this video. But and anyway, the only relation to what you were saying was that, you know, it was a Muslim shooting a white guy. I guess that didn't deserve news, so you guys didn't know it. No, I mean, yeah, I believe there's you know, some of this might be, it's fun to discuss, and so we find the argument, but some of the real issue might just be the priorities, because like inner city crime is a problem. Well, yeah, but it's not the hugest. It's not the most expensive. It doesn't kill the most. It is a big issue. It makes the city where I don't want to live. Cities would be lovely to live in without that problem. So I think that is a huge issue, especially for city dwellers, where you have to live with that. And you basically, even in a nice city, kind of have to get used to getting robbed every couple years. I mean, in nice I know decent neighborhoods in the East Bay, and yeah, you're going to get robbed because every couple of years someone comes through and manages to pull it off. So this is not okay. But it's not what I spend most of my time worrying about, right? It's not the biggest problem that I have to make particular statements on, right? I really think that international issues and wars, you know, in the banking, the way the banking is run and costs us $1 trillion, this is ridiculous. We got to solve that problem. We might have money to solve these other problems because crime has been going down. I think we know how to. Yeah, oh, that's right, and you're right up there, Quintica. You should talk about that. You know what? Here, let me say my non-SJW thing about this Flint water crisis. They're showing us all these bottles of brown water. Okay, I'm a little suspicious. Why aren't they showing it out of a tap ever? The fuck?
Well, okay. Here's what's really it's so nuanced, the whole thing, right? But it was a major screw up by the governor and by his emergency manager, right? Now the thing is that Snyder, okay, Republican, white guy, right? I was a Granholm supporter. I didn't vote for him, whatever, but I follow him. I follow some of his tweets and all that. Okay. Anyway, what happened was they changed the process and they started to get this water from the Flint instead of Detroit, right? Okay, so they got this other water, and they had to add another process to it to purify it. Well, anyway, they didn't add the final finishing process that would change the pH, right? So effectively what they did is they pumped acid through the pipes, and people were drinking this, and it was rotting the pipes out. The lead and stuff was coming from this pH, this ultra-high pH. Now they can, the governor today, they have 3 lawsuits against him in the city, right? The people there are trying to get it to where they don't have to pay any of their water bills because of this, and I don't blame them for that.
Well,
right?
They definitely probably shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the $100 a day thing that they could have done for $100 a day. Was the pH balancing?
Well, no. See, I don't know.
I have been following it, but they don't really tell you all the shit unless you look. You know.
Right.
So go ahead. Well, I've heard about they could have fixed it with $100 a day. It sounds like, yeah, acidic water. I know we have acidic water from our well, and our pipes are falling apart. And if they're copper, you're going to leak heavy metals, even in modern, let alone when you had lead pipe.
Right.
Whatever. So wait, go ahead. I've heard about this. Sounds like this is the $100 thing. So for like $30,000, they could have not poisoned everybody. Plus, you're saying they've ruined the pipes too. So getting clean water isn't good enough.
Right. So even though they stopped it and they changed it back to the old water system, there's still damage, and there's 10 people dead. There's over 100 in the hospital from this, right?
I see.
And people are taking this, right? Now, Inkster, I live right next to Inkster. That's a nearby city. Okay, Inkster's had lead pipes the whole time, and it's a predominantly black city. That's why it's got the name Inkster. Anyway, they have warnings in there where the people that live in Inkster actually drink bottled water, right? It's always been that way. Okay, now this thing that happened in Flint, okay, so the corrosives ate the pipes. They did it to save a buck. They were trying to save money. The people there, you got high unemployment, a lot of black people, a lot of high unemployment, and now you have this Republican white guy, the rich nerd, who made this mistake, right? Or the guy that he had directly under him made this mistake. So now people are calling to lynch him. You know?
Well, because there's no water engineer that even I know enough about plumbing that you can't let this acidic water. So there's no water engineers would have been saying you can't do that. So somebody's going to get in big trouble, or should. Right? There's no math that makes this add up at that cost and that basic of, and I don't. You just explained these things in a couple sentences. And I've watched all of the news channels. None of them are explaining why they need a $9 billion water system. Why not just run the pipe back to the Detroit? Because it's not about that. They've ruined their water system. That makes total sense. Easy. They don't even bother. But okay. So go ahead. Yeah. And so I heard about it's the governor or the mayor that is getting pinned.
No, the governor's taking a hit. Well, see, here's the thing is the governor has these 3 lawsuits against him and the emergency manager, right? And the city in turn. Okay, but right now the governor is trying to hide the information, right? They're not turning over information that they're legally supposed to turn over as far as what they did. So they're not telling everybody what they did because they don't want to get in any more trouble than they already have. Now look at this as not the immediate problem, but look at the PR from this, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've got this one tough nerd guy, this rich white guy, this Donald Trump kind of guy on a small scale, right?
Yeah, I don't know anything. I haven't followed him, but so take your word for it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
he's just a fresh governor, right?
Well, he's been in a little while, but he was the one that replaced Granholm when Granholm left, right?
Okay.
And so anyway, so now people I talk to in different countries. They see this as like a genocide kind of thing, like a rich white guy trying to kill off a bunch of black people, right? So you're going to see this huge backlash in all these papers, in different nations, right? And it's going to put pressure on stuff going on in Michigan, and there is going to be a lot of racial tension in the surrounding cities because of this. This is going to last for a long time. Now, Cher, I don't know if you knew about this. Cher, the singer, she was one of the first ones down here donating water and stuff. FEMA was late again, was like 2 or 3 days late. So now there's all this distrust in the government because FEMA didn't do their job again, right? So now, and you have to imagine, okay, so the governor calls the White House, gets a hold of Barack Obama, and gets federal aid for this, right? You know, for FEMA and all that. You got to imagine how that phone call went, right?
Yeah.
And
this is an interesting point, actually, because I think there could be some racism in that, but I would actually agree that it's a problem, like counterproductive, because I really think it's more of an economic thing. Like, fuck these poor people, and if we, you know, and when the poor people are Arabs in you know, in Europe, then they're the ones get fucked. If it was when it's Irish, boom, you know, it's like, to me, it's more economic. So if I wanted to go, hey, here's the bias, it's that they would play with people's lives like that. And, you know, it could be racially, but it's also, what's the difference of those poor people? They don't need good water. They could move to a better place if they wanted to. And, hey, I have a question, definitely not super important, but so they said there's 100,000 people in Flint. And I thought, are you kidding me? Because I just thought Flint even now would be bigger. I mean, Flint, my question is, how big was Flint before it got abandoned by, you know, the Otto and Steel or whatever?
Oh,
wasn't it a million?
Well, probably. I really couldn't tell you. I just know that.
I could look it up online, but I was just kind of curious. I'll look it up online, but I was just, because this is another thing. It's kind of an empty city. I had the feeling that,
right.
Oh, well, you have a city with a lot of empty space, and that's another thing that's like, well, that city's already wasted. We're going to get good water for them, you know, but it's so boneheaded to not spend $30,000 or whatever, but,
right.
You know, maybe they saved even more money not hiring the experts, which is why they missed such an obvious thing or whatever. But I think there's biases like that. It would be a shame if it's too purely racial. I think we need to remember, well, I mean, I'm a working class kid when I was a kid, and, you know, there's bias against you. Believe me, you wearing long hair and whatnot, the cops also, not quite as bad, maybe a little bit less likely to shoot you, but, or maybe not, though. I mean, we got hassled, we felt the same way. Certainly was beyond the threshold line. So I kind of feel like sometimes, yeah, I would rather have us focus on the economic abandonment involved in a situation like this. But anyway, go ahead. And do you think it's racial? How about you live there? You know, there's definitely racial tensions in, you know, in Michigan, right? Yeah. So how much could that really be it?
This could get really ugly because, because
no, I mean, judge the governor first. What's your little 1 second take of, was he thinking that way, or was it just more, you know, party or the moron?
No, I think he just made some really bad decisions, and he trusted a guy he shouldn't have trusted. And this emergency manager, I guess, has had other, from what I've read, has had other things that he messed up before.
Oh, that's right. No, I was hearing about that. Yeah, so he's known for cut every penny. So yeah, I see.
Right.
Okay, now, well, that seems likely. Yeah. But you think it's going to become a racial issue? And do you think there's any legitimacy to that? Would this mistake have been made on a white community, say?
Yeah. Well, see, we had a thing with Detroit a while back. I guess it'd be a few years ago now. But there was a thing where these people would not pay their water bill. And so because they didn't pay their water bill, people were shutting them down, shutting down the taps. Well, what happened was it became like a global story because people were saying, like, well, you know, water's a right and these people should have it as a right. Now, I can tell you, I live in Wayne County, which Detroit is in Wayne County. And I pay higher taxes. Part of my taxes pays for Detroit's water, right? And along with the other cities in that. But most of the manufacturing and everything is outside of Detroit, right? Like the neighboring cities. Okay, so now there was a big push before that to kind of cut Detroit out of Wayne County, right? To get some of these, to make another county for it. because what happens is, okay, so the economy goes bust in Detroit. These people that are unemployed or whatever, they can't pay their bills, or they won't pay their bills, or whatever the situation is, and so then the taps get shut down, and so then it creates this big public outcry, and then my taxes get raised, right, along with these other cities. Now, you know, you can say, and I don't want to vilify an entire group of people, right? You can say that some of the people, it was their fault. Some of the people, you know, were collecting welfare or were collecting unemployment that probably could have gotten a job, or you know, I'm not sure about that. So it gets muddy as far as trying to distinguish that with the cows. But then the thing is that the other outlying areas, the other satellite cities, we've had a lot of unemployment too, right? So then you're creating another tax to subsidize Detroit's water. And when Kwame was in, I'm sure you heard about all the nightmares going on there. He was pocketing money left and right, and his people scamming the water company, and the water company had a problem with Kwame, with the city of Detroit, right? And so now this is all carrying over, and then we see this thing with Flint, and what I'm thinking is, even if they get this fixed, they get everything replaced and all that other stuff, just think of the racial tensions that are going to be going on throughout the country because of this, right? FEMA screwed up again. They were late, right? And I'm not even sure it was FEMA's fault, because, you know, I don't know when the mayor.
Well, I don't think the national news is not covering it as a racial thing.
No.
You know what it is? It's kind of because of the fact that, now maybe you could confirm or deny this, but I was reading that actually Michael Moore tweeting about this, that he got at attention, and, you know, people might not remember, but basically, you know, he's all about Flint. He's, you know, I don't think anybody that really knows him has forgotten that he managed, you know, he's one of these Spike Lee documentaries, paid his own money following around the CEO, you know, all of that. So I think because of that angle, maybe because the press knows, it's being taken as a working class thing so far. But I believe you that it's not going to stay that way. And, you know, I'm liberal enough to go, I can't insist it stay that way. I wouldn't, you know, I couldn't eliminate that there really was a racial issue. The funny thing is, you're allowed to do really stupid things as a politician, but if he does cover this up, he's going to jail. That's the funny thing. Even the CNN analyst was like, these guys, they always go to jail in the, you know, governmental malfeasance. You can't almost be sued. There's almost never a crime, no matter how stupid and stuff it is. I mean, you really have to say, we're going to rip people off, you know, and write that down. But the cover-up, you know, is illegal. And so, yeah, if he doesn't give, and with all of these private, the class action, I think, from whatever yesterday, you know, it's not just, you know, you can't be friends with a particular judge or particular governor or nothing. It's coming from all angles. So you should not cover up. You should just say, you know what, I'm going to have to resign as governor because they're going to read what I said, but at least I won't go to jail. Right.
See, that's the thing. And right now, it appears, okay, I see him on Twitter, and there's like and I know he's not personally doing this, right? Or probably not. But they're giving updates like every 5-10 minutes, whatever, on Twitter. They're just hammering it. Rich Snyder. And
he is. Oh, he really is.
Yeah. And Flint or Moore, I haven't followed lately. We used to send messages back and forth for a while. I thought he went a little overboard on some stuff, on other issues. But the thing with Snyder is,
well, I was just saying why he adds a working class thing to it. So I mean, because otherwise, why didn't it go racial? But I think people think about Flint and all the white people that were working in, you know, it's not, they don't think of it as a black, it devastated a multicultural community, basically. So people don't necessarily associate it outside, but, you know, if it becomes racial in there, in Michigan, then you're right, it definitely is the strength of, I mean, once it looks racial, it's pretty bad. I mean, it is like a genocidal kind of a mistake to make to a whole town, except for they can, you know, it's time to leave town, basically.
Right. And I think I told you this one before. we had there was an event that happened in Louisiana that was a racist event where these kids were hanging nooses or whatever, and so anyway, Jesse Jackson got in on it, Al Sharpton got in on it, and the next thing you know, my city hall right behind me, they have all these protesters and stuff all around my city hall, you know, and
Yeah, sure.
and so the thing is when that happened, what was especially bad about that is we just had a case where a white woman was shot defending her child, her kid, by a black guy playing basketball that was not from that complex. That was right down the street. We had a white cop that just got shot, a black cop that just got shot, and this was all around the same time, right? So you got this powder keg, right? I got the street behind me is like a bunch of bikers and stuff, right? The street behind that is almost all black, right? And that's right where the city hall is, right there, right? So there's a lot of you know, as far as I see, everybody around here, for the most part, gets along, you know, and there's not a big racial issue. We're not, nobody's freaked out about seeing each other or whatever, right? But once this stuff happens and you start getting people coming in from other areas, other states, and they start pushing the issue, then you get the guys with the guns that are getting all worried, you know, well, what if this happens here? My mom moved out to Pittsford, which is on the Ohio border. That's like the middle of nowhere, right? It's Amish country, right? Okay, so anyway, they legalized something to do with pot, with growing pot. So the state's growing pot down there now, right? Okay, well now they're getting their houses broke into, and this is like a Mayberry type of area, you know. I mean, there's nothing new around there, no city, nothing. Okay, well these people are getting their houses broke into by meth heads, and you know, coming out of the cities, right? And it's like they got to drive. Okay, it takes me 90 miles to drive just to get there, right?
Yeah.
People are driving farther than that just to get meth, and well, to get money, to steal things, to get money to pay for meth, and there's pot all over the place, right? Which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because nobody's there for the pot, and now.
Well, my opinion is that, well, you know, I do have some conspiratorial attitudes about the various things about why did the city get so dangerous. I mean, cities were always a little bit dangerous, but there was definitely a big turn. Maybe it was just population or whatever, but I lost my train of thought. Wait, because I went too big of a tangent.
Okay, well, let me steer it back towards business, right? Okay, what you're saying about these areas and stuff, right? Now I told you that you know, there's a few streets here where you go like on every corner, and there's a mall that's totally closed down, right? There's nothing going on. I mean, it's a
I know.
Okay, and I know that if you drive down Gratiot, okay, I used to drive down Gratiot to do gigs in Detroit, right? So I'd go up Gratiot, and I'd go like Gratiot and 7 Mile, 8 Mile, whatever, and one time I remember they had this brand new Walgreens they put there, right? It was beautiful, you know, beautiful building, all that. That thing was trashed in probably 2 months, right? Graffiti, all this other stuff in it. And it was one of those things that it was a discount store, you know, it's like it would have been a great thing for the city, right? But it was just trash. They had a KFC next to it that they had to actually level because of the rats, right? And that was right down there. Now they never built those back up. That just becomes a you know, a vacant corner, right? And Kmart's, like when they used to have Kmart's, when there were more Kmart's around and stuff, they were all excited in Detroit because they had one Kmart's that was left in Detroit, and they took that away, right? Because it was getting vandalized and stuff like that. I have there was a store called Seaway down the street from me. It was like a grocery store, right? And it was a beautiful store, and had really good discount, all that other stuff. They were getting to where they had to lock all the doors except for one door, entrance door, because people were just shoplifting like crazy there.
Yeah.
And they ended up closing up. Like,
well, there's parts of Oakland where most of Oakland's actually fairly safe. There's parts of Oakland where, yeah, there's an armed security guard in front of the little Safeway down there. So, or it was a Rayleigh's, I'm thinking of, and this is also 20 years ago, but I'm sure it's similar now. So I remember what I was going to say as far as this, back on that, because you made the link of they're going up there to steal money to go back and have meth, and there's, you know, pot to steal. Is kind of what you seem to be saying. What I'm saying conspiratorial is I really think the Nancy Reagan just say no thing, it was I saw in California that was huge anti-pot, and that is when meth. I mean, there was meth around in the 60s, you know, methamphetamine, speed, of course. On the other hand, all the hippies were like, speed kills, you know, and you should be doing PCP, or no, yeah, PCP would be a crazy thing, but they might say on the psychedelic side. But anyway, so I think that fighting this bulky pot, that really grew the meth. I think they created, not intentionally again, but through their systematic biases and mistakes, they actually created that. And they also have destroyed the cultures in the inner city, not just African American, but that whole culture where you have to live in fear. And I believe it's semi on purpose, you know, to control the peoples. I mean, that's where I was saying it sounds a little conspiratorial. It is, but
yeah, well, how much of that?
Just a coincidence, you know.
Right. Well, how much of that is by design or just total ineptitude, or this idea of like, we're going to take the money and run? You know, we'll set this up. And when Granholm was in charge around here, they had to actually tell people to stop building buildings in my city, in Taylor, right? Because they were building all these apartment complexes, and things were going broke before they were finished. And so they said, well, before you build any new homes or any new whatever, you got to start selling some of the ones you have out here, start getting them occupied. And I don't know what Snyder's plan is on that. I imagine it would probably be tighter than that, but I haven't followed him that close to know how he handles it.
Hey, what's your baseball version of? You think he's going to have to step down? You think he's going to do time? You think...
I don't think he'll do time because he's just really, really connected, right?
Do you think anybody will do time?
I don't think he'll do time. I think he might have to resign. If he does finish out his term, he's not going to run again. You know, he's not. Yeah. You know, but yeah, he's really well. It's like Kwame. It took us forever to get Kwame going there, and then.
Well, you got a political machine situation there, right?
Right.
Well, just a sec. I mean, yeah. You could do whatever you want, babe. Okay, well, I turned the camera off. My wife doesn't want to be on camera. Okay. So, yeah, just curious. I have no idea. I never really followed your politics, but I know it's kind of like Illinois. Or it has a reputation of there's a political machine. You'd be surprised how hard people can hang on.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and I don't know if it's going on now with all of the sort of the economic disaster, but certainly when things were going well, a lot of, what do they always call it? Patronage, you know, kind of.
Right.
You know, vote for your boss that gives you a job kind of situations, so.
Yeah, and I don't think for a minute that he would intentionally bring this on himself or bring this on Flint. I think it was just ineptitude by that emergency manager he had, and that he should have maybe watched what was going on more, right? But now they're withholding evidence. And
yeah, so that'll be a problem. The part I'm just like reducing it, like boundary conditions. Somebody had to ignore what the engineer told them. You know what I mean? There's no way that water engineer isn't going to say, hey, for $100, that's nothing. Even though there's only 100,000 people there, that's not a big cost for water in general. So somebody must have, like, filed that in the trash can or something. You know, I mean, it just seems like there's going to be a criminal level of negligence at some point. Because you don't not have water engineers. And if you did have one, then how could that not be... You know, it's the 21st century. There's no city that doesn't have rules about getting experts before you spend millions of dollars or save millions. So, but we'll see. Yeah, it could just be. Well, you know, I have this whole thing about functional equivalence. I've argued with Vic a lot, where you know, I will be happy to talk about incompetence versus malevolence, but at the point where they converge into the same functional behavior. As far as I'm concerned, they're the same thing. You know, it's like I can't read minds, so basically there's, you know, if it's functionally the same, and if it coincidentally helps people by weakening their enemies or whatever, like my argument with Vic was always about the Halliburton. You know, if you have the lucky coincidence of making $1 billion off of your mistake, that's lucky, because most of us are trying to be smart to make money, and if you could be an idiot and make money by accidentally destroying your enemy unintentionally, so, but whatever. At a certain point, I don't care which it is.
Vic just posted it's Hanlon's razor.
Yeah, that's what that's called.
Is that what, oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's, wow.
What's that? Hanlon's razor?
Yeah.
Is what?
It's basically that thing where, anything that you typically that you might think can be attributed to malevolence is
it's the saying. Okay,
typically incompetence. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that there's politicians that know how to play that, especially all the good old boy types, the LBJs and the Bush W and stuff. They know how to play the, well, shucks, guy, I'm doing my best.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, you know my take on that. It's like a lot of it could be incompetence, but it could also be honest mistakes. And then politicians never want to own up to mistakes. That's bad politically, right? They can't get reelected, and So I can see why someone would lie and try to cover up a mistake, and that's not necessarily because they had these ulterior motives or whatever.
Right. Yes. No, I agree, and I answer that dichotomy by, in the end, I'm going to make judgments based on what I consider like the functional situation, not on my reading of minds. Of course, we have a legal system which is all based on intent, and so
Hey,
I'm the minority here.
I'd like to get your opinion on something. So I was watching Dick Coughlin's latest video. He's apparently gotten into a little bit of a beef with atheism is unstoppable.
I was in that hangout.
Yes, I noticed you. I saw it as I was watching the video. I noticed that you were in the little chat. So.
It saves the chat in the video, or were you actually in the hangout?
You didn't watch Coughlin's latest video?
No, I was in the actual hangout. I didn't know that it records the chat. Oh, I see.
He screenshotted it, I guess.
I see.
Yeah, no, it doesn't normally. Yeah, it doesn't normally record the hat. I guess he must have screenshotted it.
I was in there.
Screen recording, rather. Yeah, and it showed that you were in the chat. So then I was curious. I'm like, that reminds me. I should probably ask him what he thinks of atheism as unstoppable, because I'm pretty sure that you're pretty much diametrically opposed to everything that.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, I'm like torn on that guy. I just found out about atheism is unstoppable about maybe like a couple of months ago. Like, I never heard of him before, and my initial impression was like, this guy's just an arrogant douche, right? Like super arrogant, really abrasive. Doc drop. I found out of him through Creationist Cat, because he got into a squabble with this guy, so I decided to check him out, right? But the more I watched his videos, it's like, I'm torn, right? Because on a personal front, I can't stand the guy, but on the social issues, I feel like I'm pretty much agree with everything he has to say.
Well, my position is that you separate those two things. So
Yeah, I do. But it's hard for me to support, especially, and it's not just the fact that he's an asshole, because I think actually that's a lot of that is part of his shtick, like that whole alpha male thing that he does. I think, and in him being a narcissist, I think that's actually part of his shtick. He's trying to be over the top. It's just his persona.
Well, during the hangout, I went in there because I'd never heard of him, and he has highly produced videos or whatever with clips of other people, and I realized I'm not going to be able to tell which one is him without watching for a while and whatnot, so I didn't go back. But I was going to check him out. But yeah, I saw he's definitely the, he's
you're not going to like him. You're definitely
he's on the Thunderfoot atheism minus kind of side of things, right?
Oh, he's like anti-establishment. The only allegiance he has is to himself. I mean, he has no problem. Relatively young, but he's not like a kid.
Well, I'm 50, so I mean.
He's younger than you are.
I would say
he's in his late 20s, early 30s. That's what I thought.
So I think I know which one he was, but I haven't really heard his videos yet because I was poking around trying to.
He presents well-articulated arguments, very very good arguments, very compelling, and I personally find him to be very
okay.
Well, he was being a pissy little drama queen in the Dick thing, which is fine. So is Dick, but I mean, he was all like, "I had to come here because somebody said something bad. You were saying something bad about me," and it was like, "Come on."
I actually responded to Coughlin's video because he was claiming that Atheism Unstoppable actually self-pwned. Like, he pwned himself by the way he came off. And I said, no, Dick, you actually pwned yourself. Because Atheism Unstoppable wasn't there to argue with him, right? He was there to goad him, right? And he basically baited him with these trolley questions that he asked, right? So it was just very simple trolley questions that he asked. Are you gay? You know, just stuff like that. And it's obvious that he intends to get a rise out of him. And then Dick comes out with this 30-minute video where he's ranting and raving. He's all twitching and clearly bothered and frustrated, just ranting about him. So to me, that's him winning. And I reminded him, like, this is basically like a tamer version of when you kind of imploded, when you kind of like pwned yourself, when you basically had a nervous breakdown in response to Fake Sagan and TJ. Remember that back in the day?
Yes,
I mean, yeah. So that's essentially what happened again with that video, except, you know,
to a lesser degree, yeah.
Yeah, to a lesser degree.
Someone that didn't know about atheism is unstoppable. I mean, I was ready for him to be a 13-year-old kid when I was seeing his chats, because if he was trolling, fine, but he's just like, this whole thing of, I gotta come in because somebody on the internet saying something bad about me.
There's one thing about the guy that I can't stand. Okay, now of course, again, I can look past the narcissism and the just the over-the-top bravado as just part of his shtick. But one thing that he does, which is deplorable, I mean, I fucking detest people who do this. It's people who block, like, indiscriminately. This guy will block literally anybody who disagrees with him.
Sure.
Like, even innocuous things.
Nadia yet? Okay, one thing. Please, can I jump in here? Thanks for having your hangout. All right. What Coughlin did, could you detect that was by design?
On Coughlin's part? You mean
yes.
what Coughlin did?
Response to...
you mean to gain views or something?
No, it wasn't to... Okay, Coughlin has these things called minions. There was this person... Okay, Coughlin will sick his minions on you in order to, troll you out of the community. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, no.
Oh, yeah. There's this person, called Raul. His name was Atheism Defended. Have you ever heard of him?
Who?
Atheism Defended, Raul. This is years ago. I've been around here for a while. Anyway, so he got in a tiff with Coughlin, and Coughlin sicked his minions on him just to, run him out. He ran him out pretty good for about a year. He's come back, I guess, since then.
Huh.
Not the same.
Okay.
So anyway, the reason that, Coughlin does these things is so he can sick the minions on the kid.
Well, I mean, Atheism Unstoppable has, way more subscribers than Coughlin.
Oh, really? Than Coughlin? Than Stainface?
Stainface?
Are we talking about the same Coughlin? Because that's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah,
Stainface. Yes, that's the guy with.
Okay, Stainface has what? 30,000 subs. This guy has more?
He has 7,000 subscribers.
Well, on this channel,
Unstoppable has 35,000 subscribers, and then when you combine them all across those channels, I think he has a lot more than that even. Because apparently he's been booted off.
Because Coughlin had 30, 40 when I knew him.
Yeah. No. Well, at least currently he has a lot.
He never rebuilt up his channel after.
No, and the thing that's disgusting. I hate groupies. I really detest groupies. And one thing that Atheism Unstoppable has, he's got a lot of fucking mindless.
So he has minions too. All right.
Yes,
that's the alliance I would like to have. Cross philosophy with your political philosophy or whatever. And mind you, you say some things that really bother me, but I hate groupthink. I hate fandom.
Yeah.
This is I really want the meta alliance about that, because that's the biggest. It is annoying.
Yes.
And it's also destructive.
I am no fanboy of anybody. I can be a fan of someone, but if somebody says something I disagree with, I will go at them. I will point it out to them. You can't point. The reason I don't point out anything. Well, usually I'm agreeing with Atheism Unstoppable on the political issues, but when it comes to the blocking shit, right? I would love to just tear into him about just what an asshole thing that is to do. But the thing, he would just block me, and that would just create an inconvenience for me. It's not that I'm being a bitch or whatever. It's just that it would be an inconvenience for me, because then he would block me, then it doesn't come up in my subscription box anymore. I can't watch his videos as easily. So I just don't bother, and that's why a lot of people don't bother. But It is despicable what he does.
Okay. Well, the person that's going to stop the atheism unstoppable is atheism unstoppable. He'll just do himself in. Self-destruct.
How so?
No, we'll just figure. That's like G-Man. I mean, G-Man, knocks himself in and out. The person that takes down the prima donna is the prima donna.
I don't know. He seems to be pretty resilient. He's been. Looks like a lot of his channels have been flagged and they've been taken down, and he just moves on to the next channel. I don't think he gives a shit what people think. He doesn't seem to be. Yeah, and in fact, he encourages people to just unsubscribe. He's like, if you don't agree with me, unsubscribe, get out, leave. I don't want you here.
That shtick will not work in the long run. Okay, you've heard this person named Brett Keane?
I've heard of him, yeah.
All right, same thing. I mean, just sort of gets old. The shtick gets old.
Yeah, but Brett Keane is like he's a regressive. He doesn't. I don't consider him an alpha.
Okay, so
whereas Atheism Unstoppable, his whole shtick is about being an alpha.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I've just heard about him. I've heard of him. And
it's kind of funny actually because he goes.
They just like you. They're offended that they get blocked so easily.
Well, I guess he's done some good marketing in the sense that I'm gonna watch and check out, so I have my own opinion about him.
I'm just big on free speech, right? I'm just big on free speech. I would never. The only time that if I actually made videos and the only time that I would ever consider blocking someone is if they're trolling, like they're deliberately spamming my comment section.
They're on a mission to take you out. Yeah, you might as well block them.
Just some bullshit like that. But if they're just posting like, I don't really like this video, and that's it. Right, because this guy was blocking people just for posting like
for opinion.
The guy said something like, Dylan or Devin, I really like you, but on this show, no, Devin is his name, Devin Tracy. Devin. He's like, man, I usually agree with you, but on this one, I don't agree. That's it. That's all he wrote. And the guy's like blocked. He has a whole video. You can look at it. It's like he posted it like 3 weeks ago or something. And he basically shows himself going through comments, blocking people, like bragging about all the people that he blocked. Like, this is how I read your comments.
Well, again, I don't know
what makes him
worthwhile. He was proud of it. He was proud of it.
Well, I don't know if it's subconscious, but this is the method of creating fandom. And on the internet, since you always get a new supply, so any old 5-watt bulb can create fandom by you weed out anybody with even a little bit of not that way, and you'd run out of people in a regular social life. But online, if you keep at it,
honestly, I don't think that's what he's doing. I don't think he's.
I agree.
I'm not saying it's conscious. I'm saying that
no.
Thing related.
Oh, okay, yeah. But the reason
people that are clever about it would know that that's how you do it on purpose.
The reason that he's doing it is not because he's afraid of dissenting opinions or anything like that. The reason he's doing it is just to show what a badass he is. Because he knows that people hate it when you censor people or block people. He hates that. And he's like basically anti-establishment. So he's going to go against the grain.
He's also creating a safe space for himself.
No, believe me, he's not concerned about safe spaces. He'll go anywhere. He'll talk about anything. He doesn't give a shit about political correctness.
Given that, what is worthwhile about the individual?
Well, the reason I like him is because one, it's kind of like in Mendham. Why do people subscribe to Mendham? Why am I subscribed to Mendham? It's because sometimes the way he berates people and the way he goes after people, it's entertaining. It's drama, right? And with this guy, he's so over the top and abrasive that it's actually funny a lot of times.
Well, and you're in the market.
But on top of that, I like the fact. I like that he's a no bullshit kind of guy. That he doesn't pander. He just says the truth. Kind of like what I did here today, right? I told you what I thought was the truth, and I gave you my opinion, completely unfiltered. I don't fucking care about political correctness. I don't care that people are going to label me a racist and a bigot. It's ridiculous. And I know myself well enough to know that I'm not a racist or a bigot or something in the way that I would consider to be reprehensible.
Okay, question that comes to mind. If you met this guy in real life, IRL, he would be the same persona, or he'd be...
That's a good question, because I kind of get the feeling that it's just part of his shtick. I think he would be less abrasive and less narcissistic. Yeah. But he might be like that. In which case I wouldn't want to hang out with the guy, but I'd still agree with him politically, mostly.
He's not a Luddite. He actually maybe just a caricature. I'd be like a pro wrestler.
No, he's not a Luddite at all. I'm not sure where you get that.
Like, he's intellectual. That's what you're trying to tell me.
Oh yeah, he certainly is. Yeah.
I mean, he's not like. What I meant by Luddite is that he's stubborn. You know, he's baked in. But apparently,
Yeah, but he's not. I don't consider him an unreasonable person. I mean, everything that he says is backed up by evidence. It's well articulated. Okay. He goes point by point. You know, he just doesn't pander. He doesn't try to conform to any like social norm or anything like that. He just calls it like he sees it, and I respect that.
Definitely
I like that.
Upward trajectory, right? In your estimation, this guy's going up.
Oh no, I don't care. Even if he had like 100 subscribers, I wouldn't give a shit. I don't care about his status or popularity.
But you enjoy it. I mean, you can detect that this guy's, you know, doing it right.
Oh, I enjoy the shtick. Yeah, I do. I do enjoy his, because it's funny. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched the guy, but
no, I've just heard about him. So
watch some of his videos, and you'll see what I mean. It's if you disagree with him, you'll probably be put off by him. But if you agree with him on the issues, on the substance of it, then I think you'll be able to overlook and even appreciate the humor.
The warts and all. I appreciate warts and all.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's so disgusting. Some of his like fanboys, like that, when he made that video where he just basically bragged about how he goes through and indiscriminately blocks people for like nothing.
Right.
People in the comment section were like, "Yeah, you go, Devin. Fuck those
sycophants,
assholes." Yeah, exactly. Total sycophants.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever gotten?
And they all have it. Thunderfoot has them. Coughlin, I'm sure, has them. Anybody, once they reach a certain level of popularity, they have a whole bunch of fanboys who just mindlessly agree with
accolade him.
They'll thumb it up. They'll blow smoke up your ass. Another one that's disgusting, and is I don't know if you've heard of him. Integral Math, Justicar, whatever.
Okay, tell me about it.
This guy is probably one of the most narcissistic, arrogant people I've probably ever met until I met this Devin guy. He's a smart guy, don't get me wrong. Smart guy, very articulate.
I think he's quite funny.
Funny, he can be funny too.
Yeah. He's funny.
But the thing is, he does make mistakes. And when you point them out,
he bristles.
Most of the time he does not own up to it. He'll own up to it like once in a while when it's like really overt. But other times he'll use really shady tactics, and people will thumb up the video no matter what. Like I remember there was this one video that he made attacking William Lane Craig. This was like a few years back.
All right.
And it was, and I'm no fan of William Lane Craig. Obviously, I'm like atheist and all these things, and he's one of the biggest idiots there is, right? But the particular criticism that Integral Math was leveling on William and Craig just wasn't fair. It wasn't. He was basically strawmanning him. That's not what he was actually saying. So I and many other people pointed it out, and he would deny it, and then he would misrepresent me and shit. And he just used all these weasel tactics. But that video, even though it was obviously false, like just anybody who watches that and looks at it objectively knows that he was 100% in the wrong in the way that he was describing William Lane Craig's argument. And yet it had 98% thumbs up.
Right. Okay.
This is groupthink, man.
They have a parable, a fable called The Emperor Has No Clothes, right? So you're the little boy in the crowd who said, hey, the guy's naked, and everybody just wouldn't have it, right? So they went ahead and said you had it.
Yeah. I mean, and I detest that. I detest that groupthink, that group mentality where people just mindlessly thumb up a video. And when he did that, I actually sent him a private message.
Yeah.
That is respond. I send him, I'm like, you're sycophant. I forgot what I wrote exactly, but it was something along the lines of, like, your sycophants are it's pretty mind-blowing.
Right.
So it would be an interesting social experiment for you to put out a video where you emphatically say something that is false, right?
Right.
But you say it with confidence and flair, and you throw in bogus statistics and stuff,
right.
Bogus
a social experiment.
And I can guarantee you that like 95% of the same amount of people who normally thumb up your video would continue thumb up that video. And then you could do a lot of good in terms of groupthink and ending that by humiliating people in that way, kind of like shaming them and say, look what you did, right?
Right, but you have to go down the wrong road a long way before you could do that, right? You're already not the person that would do that. Because like me, when people show a little fandom, I usually get in their face and make them feel like a moron for acting that way, and they either say, well, you're an asshole, you should appreciate my fandom more, and run off. And so I don't have people like that, so I can't run that experiment, I don't think.
No, yeah, I don't think you're.
So that's the funny
I
thing.
think people like that when they
Thunderfunk are going to do that to their fans. They value them.
Well, you know the reason that he wouldn't do
Especially
something
when
like
they're
that
minions.
is because, first of all, he's getting paid, right, by these minions, right? So if he alienates a significant portion of his fan base by that, like if people unsubscribe because they can't trust anything he has to say anymore because he's going to play these little fucking social experiments on them, then they'll unsubscribe, and then that means less money for him, less fame, less popularity.
Vic, I wanted to tell you this because the comedian Eddie Izzard had really some good jokes about this, but it's a true principle. He says, and this is true, there's other, you could defend this otherwise, but he says basically it's 70% how you look, 20% how you sound, and 10% what you actually said. And his example is that he uses for his joke is when
Ich bin Berliner.
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Yeah, which is Berliner's the name of a jelly donut, and so he just went jelly donut, and all the people in the audience were like, "He's a jelly donut." And probably next to him, someone was like, "He sounded so good." Someone was like, "Yeah, it's an American thing. I'm a jelly donut. I'm a jelly donut." And I'm from Frankfurt, and I'm a Frankfurter, and I'm from Hamburg, and I'm a hamburger. And but it really is true. It's this how you sound, and it comes across. And I just think it's related.
Yes.
What I was saying about
So
associational thinking. When you only can think about groups of people, which is what humans are evolved to think about. So they are able to think about groups of people and communities. They have evolved to think about those, but they haven't evolved to think about abstract mathematics or whatever. So then you get weird situations where people think math is whatever mathematicians that math teachers are like or whatever. And I think it's related, but even if it's not, I think we're on the same page that it's both annoying and I think destructive, but at the very least, it's a pet peeve level of
no, it's
annoying.
very destructive. It reminds me of like the Milgram experiment, the Ash experiment. I mean, these two experiments highlight the problem that we have, and it's a people problem. It's not. I used to think naively. This was like years ago, like a decade or more ago. I used to think that atheists in general were less prone, less susceptible to that type of groupthink bullshit, and I thought that was like purely like a theistic thing. They were more likely, like Christians and stuff were more likely, but no, that fanboyism, that fucking herd mentality shit is a people problem. Like everywhere.
It came with the popularity. I mean, the time at which atheists seemed like more rational would be the 80s or 90s when it was still like I was an atheist. I talked to kids in high school, didn't think atheism was a real thing. We didn't have the internet, and we weren't in each other's face. And so, you know what? I actually think philosophically that this is the priority. I think as a practical activist, I'm looking at other things like I think our bridges are falling down, infrastructure, war and stuff. But philosophically, the turn that I wish people would take, this is it. If they could just think less group-oriented. Because, you see it all the time. It's like people don't want to punish the criminals that they consider in their own group, right? They want to punish the other side for being racist, but one of their side's racist, they'll make an excuse. Oops, I'm sorry, I accidentally switched Ubuntu because I thought you were a new person because you changed your icon. Okay, you're back on. But,
so going back to the thing, I mean, the thing, I mean, this is why I think like Gary gets a lot of followers, is because when you present any sort of idea with a lot of confidence and you do it in simple terms that people can really understand, even though they're ignorant, they'll just believe you because you're coming off as an authority figure. And when you present yourself as an authority figure, people tend to trust you and believe you. Yeah. And it's that mentality is so destructive.
I don't know if you've noticed.
People actually do any fact checking anymore.
There's been a lot of work on NPD, and there's this guy on YouTube, and actually it has started reevaluation in the sense that there wasn't really research and work on narcissism since, you know, like the 90s and stuff. But now there's a lot of it. There's a lot of people that are claiming to, you know, have narcissistic parents, and they're inventing terms and the gaslighting, all of this. I don't know if you've noticed this. Now, the funny thing about it, though, is it's all very well to complain about the narcissist or whatever personality disorders might be behind, you know, abusive psychologically or otherwise parents. But the thing we really have to face is, and I faced in my relationship, is, you know, why are we attracted to somebody like that? That we're attracted to that assertion. And even you and me that are against it, I believe we're still prone to reacting that way.
I think so too. No, you're right. No, I have to actively fight against it sometimes. Sometimes I ask myself, like, why do I trust what this person is telling me? Am I being biased here? Yeah. Should I really be, like, or even the particular theory, like, why am I so gung-ho defending this theory? Do I really have all the information necessary to be so adamant here? Or should I maybe, you know, be a little more open-minded on this? So yeah, I do that a lot. Like, I remember I came to that realization a long time ago when it came to, like, Holocaust denial. Like, at the time, right, I didn't know shit about the Holocaust, right? And I had this knee-jerk reaction when anybody would, like, deny anything about the Holocaust. I'd be like, oh, you're disgusting. You're one of those Holocaust deniers, right? And then, like, it never. And then when I started reading a little bit more about it and what they were actually disputing and stuff like that, you know, it wasn't so unreasonable anymore. And I then asked myself, it's like, why did I have that knee-jerk reaction? It's not like I had any information. It was a cultural thing. I had been basically programmed to react this way to anyone who questions the Holocaust, right? Or certain facts about the Holocaust.
I think it's bullshit, but I don't think I react that way. I have a Holocaust denier.
Yeah. No, I think
in my threads right now. So I still think, but I agree, and I think it's a fine line that we can figure out, and a lot of people have figured out, but certainly not the bulk of people. And as we have the internet, and we have everybody now taking part, everybody with their scientific theories, whether it's flat or whatever, that you know, I think. There's a chance that it'll work out. I mean, I think the isolation of us pre-communication age made this stuff sustainable. Now we're seeing all this chaos in the way we all talk to each other. But, you know, it's like the steady state in the long run, that'll burn off. And I think, you know, well, like, for example, people are getting burned. You know, the guy's a fan and says, I don't like one video. Now he can't comment there anymore. He feels burned probably by that exchange. And it's a slow-moving thing, but as people go through this and have 20 years behind them, they start to get a better picture, I think, of people's imperfections, and, you know, have the approach like you have, like, well, this guy's an asshole, and then again, I kind of, you know, and then it's entertaining, you know, and you have reasons to like it, reasons not to like it, reasons not to follow him off a cliff, you know, or whatever. You know, an ability to notice. If he were to pull that trick you were talking about, you know, a heightened ability to notice that's what he was doing. Wait, this is inconsistent with what he usually says. You know, and that's all we really need, is the ability to think for ourselves.
With me, you have to do something pretty awful for me to write you off completely, where I won't listen to anything else you have to say. And I remember, there's this us versus them mentality that I detest, right? People have, like, I remember one time, like, somebody looked through the videos that I've liked, and I think I liked one of Thunderfoot's videos or something, and they used that as a reason to, like, dismiss me completely. Like, oh, you're a Thunderfoot supporter. Like, I've been very vocal against Thunderfoot, in a lot of things, right? Like when he did the hit job on Dogma films, which is totally blatant and unfair. The quote mining was out of this world with that guy. What he did with How the World Works, again, a lot of quote mining, very shady tactics that he employs, right? And I've been aware of this for a long time, right? But he puts out good content too, right? And I don't think I should have to write him off completely just because he's kind of like a duplicitous weasel in certain, you know, in certain cases.
Well, Gary did this kind of thing too, like blocking people because you subscribe to people he doesn't like anymore.
Horrible.
And then he'd keep watching those people with his what the fuck thing, talking about those people like he's allowed to watch it and we're not supposed to. But, you know, to me it goes beyond that. I mean, I've always kind of must have been born with this, but friends that fight, two of your friends get in a fight and one of them's like, You can't be friends with that other person anymore. I don't want to be friends with anybody that knows that other person anymore. That's the pet peeve of mine, and I would never give into that. And I've lost friends I valued to keep friends that weren't even really my friends, that I didn't, but I would not go on record of blacklisting that person.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so fuck it. And I would rather lose this friend that at the time I thought was decent than give in to this, that I'm supposed to be in this kind of cabal. And again, I think, you know, one thing I like about my channel is over time, I mean, there's a fair number of people with different opinions that kind of seem to have that same attitude, right? People aren't attracted to my channel because I'm aggressively telling, you know, I mean, I don't think people really are attracted to my channel at all. Actually, I think it's a conversation that I'm a part of, and if you're a part of that conversation, we end up running into each other, and maybe you show up to hang out. Thank you very much. You know what I mean? It's not really, it is a conversation as opposed to some kind of a performance where, yeah, you know, if you're doing this as a performance, of course you're supposed to be, in a sense, you then need to be a professional, and yeah, you should manage your customers. You should be a proprietor, I guess. You know, I can't really necessarily knock that, but it's not why, you know, I'm online. But you should definitely, the other thing is, well, I mean, I think being subscribed to someone, that's the stupidest thing to block someone for, because we're subscribed to people we don't like. We like getting bothered and why.
Oh,
So,
sure.
but if you like someone, same thing. If you like some video, you know, I mean, that's ridiculous evidence. It's entirely associational logic.
Well, he's got issues. I mean, he's so temperamental. It's not even funny. It's just ridiculous. But now, I mean, it kind of brings up an interesting topic, because you kind of were alarmed when I reacted in such a hostile manner with Algawa, whatever the fuck her name is. But this is the reason. This is the reason that the reason is because this woman, right, has written me off as like an evil monster. She doesn't know me, right? And all because it all started when I started talking, like, defending nihilism, and she probably doesn't even know where the hell I stand on nihilism. So she probably thinks that I'm one of these people who doesn't give a shit about morality. It's all about selfishness. She has no idea what I mean by nihilism. I don't even identify as a nihilist anymore, because it's that term has such negative connotations, right? Where people completely misconstrue it. They think that you're just some evil, selfish piece of shit. And that's totally not it. Basically, all you're saying is that you don't believe in objective moral values. That's it. That it's subjective, and then they think that you're trivializing it. But anyway, so then she starts calling me a liar, that I don't really care about animal welfare. I'm just doing it because I just talk about animal welfare, so it gives me some sort of cover, so that I can expose my bigotry and racism towards black people. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, this is just it's this us versus them bullshit, this demonizing crap, where she can't even attempt to apply the principle of charity and to give me the benefit of the doubt and try to, like, interpret what I'm saying in the most positive light instead of the most negative light. It's disgusting, and it's not just her, but a lot of people do this, and it's really
profiling, isn't it?
Why they do
but
this.
but I'm not concluding. So the thing, she's judging me, and she's already concluded that I'm all these things. It's one thing to suspect, okay, well, he's a nihilist, so I kind of have an inkling that this guy probably is kind of selfish, kind of a dick or whatever. But the moment you hear me expand on my views, that's the moment when you should abandon that idea. But no, this bitch has concluded that I'm all these awful things.
How about this? Why do females do that sort of behavior? I have an insight into that. Sometimes they're just talking to themselves, you know, but they may talk at you, but they're just talking to themselves. So you know, triggered something inside them.
People just like to put people in boxes, I think. People like to understand people, so they just it's easier that way. When they can pigeonhole you into this little box, they can say, okay, that's this guy's that guy. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. People usually can't be pigeonholed so easily, because there's all these overlapping views, different perspectives, you know, different degrees.
Well, there's a real problem here. there's a real problem here because, I mean, at least I believe that in the second wave of cognitive science pretty much has figured out a lot of things about how humans think, and it's metaphorical, and basically we think in terms of systems where the system is roles and then relationships between the role. Like, you know, if you hear doctor, you immediately think hospital and nurse and syringes and all the medical things come together. So we have to think that way. So it's like you have to be, on the one hand, you have to put somebody in a role, but then if you know that's what you're doing, and you do the mathematics right, then you don't have to like stick them in the role. You just put them there for a minute in order to generate a question, then their answer. You know what role people go into. You know, you can be clean about the way you think of these roles, and you can know that you're doing a mathematics for thinking, but it's a real difficulty because as human beings, it is automatic to think in terms of roles, and everything you see, you start instantly categorizing. Because I used to be against category in general, and I realized, wait, that's not going to work, and then I read about cognitive science the last 10 years, and I'm like, oh, that's why it's not going to work. Really, a neural system is a categorizer. As soon as things hit your eyeball, colors start to be categorized.
Well,
you know, not all the red cells even make it to the brain, so that's a problem, right? Because it is natural. When we're talking about what's natural, this is going to be how do you overcome or.
Well, in terms of just one quick little thing, and then you can jump in. Sure. It reminds me of the bias, because biases definitely exist. So, for example, this is a fairly famous one. Tell me if you've heard of this little riddle. Okay, a dad and his son were riding their bikes and crashed. 2 ambulances came and took them to different hospitals. The man's son was in the operating room, and the doctor said, "I can't operate on you. You're my son." How is that possible? So that's the question. How is that possible? So people start coming up with all the. Well, first of all, do you know the answer? Have you heard that before?
I've heard that before, and I can tell you back in the 70s when I first heard it, everybody was stumped by it, but I don't think
I was stumped by it too, man. I was stumped by it. The first time I heard it, I was stumped.
Yeah, but I saw a video where they were asking like 12-year-olds and stuff, and they weren't stumped by it because, you know, there were not women doctors when I was a kid. So is that bias? That profiling was automatic. I would say it was wrong, but how was I going to skip that? You know, it's like you never seen a woman doctor, so immediately thought man doctor. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
But so do you consider that like as evidence of a patriarchy, or do you see that as just something incidental, that a pattern that we notice just because there happens to be more male doctors and female doctors?
Right. Well, it's related. It's related because the reason was because we never had female doctors was because of a patriarchal kind of traditionalism of who should be doctors and who should be nurses. And in my case, however, I didn't believe in that system, and you know it was the 70s. I knew there were women doctors, so I was just sort of innocently going from my neural categorizations that had already set up in my brain character properties of a doctor. And so it's subconsciously.
When you said you weren't for that system, you're kind of already presupposing that it is some part of the system,
I mean,
basically.
The past system that actually thought, well, you know, women just aren't up to being doctors. There was a time that was, you know.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and they weren't accepted to medical schools and whatnot. You know, I mean, it's just like. But I was growing up in a liberal time. You know, definitely the mainstream was having a very liberal attitude. So I mean, I don't think I was being trained with an expectation women shouldn't be doctors, but I'd still absorbed this concept of. You know, enough that the wordplay there, where you slip the word, you know, father in there, the way you word it actually, you know, will change whether somebody figures out your little riddle, right? But I think that's in the functional equivalence area, right? Like, it's not necessarily people's intentional. A lot of bias, systematic bias to keep things screwed up is just that people are already used to that. So it's like air. They don't see it as screwed up. You see it as the way things are, right? So,
I just think that you have to deal with the problem differently based on the type of bias that it is. If it's a bias that's like because of overt racism or misogyny or something like that, then that's going to be, we're going to deal with that differently than if it's just something that happens to be happenstance, you know, incidental, just based on the roles that people take on for themselves. Okay, he's not even there anymore. So.
No, I am. I was.
Okay.
My wife. I just handed.
So,
my
like,
wife
when people take on these roles all on their own, right? Because of whatever they're raised with different interests and that sort of thing, right? Dealing with that quote unquote problem, assuming it's even a problem at all, right, is different than if there actually is an institutional problem that's keeping these women in these positions, right? So I mean, it's the same result, but the causes are different. So whether it's how you deal with it is going to be different.
No, and to that degree, I agree with you in the sense that there's too much of a strain, especially I think among the 20-something, both because of age and just generationally, a little too much easy, you're an evil person. You're on the wrong side of this particular issue. You're an evil person, so they won't even discuss the issue.
Right.
And yet, and so how are we going to have democracy and whatnot? And I do believe that is a big problem. And when you talk about counterproductive liberalism or any activism, it's counterproductive, whether you're conservative or you Al-Qaeda up there in Oregon or whatever, it's a mistake.
I wish people could find,
sanctimony, really. I mean, I will act in a way people will think was sanctimonious, right? I'm not a purist of, okay, I'm above it. But really, no, I don't think even when I'm feeling very opinionated, I don't feel a sanctimony about it, like it makes me a good person. Mm-hmm. I can think I'm right. I can think you're a bad person. But, it's not because, oh, look, I'm concerned about the Flint water thing, and I care about black people, so I'm a better person, because if I did think of it that way, then suddenly I'd want to make it, then you want to cast that picture, whatever makes you look good, as opposed
the
to
thing is, with you and me, we both care about black people. We both care about peace. We both want all the same things, right? It's just that we have different approaches. Like you have certain ideas about what the priority should be. I have completely different ideas of what the priority should be and what the actual predominant problem is. Like you see the problem as one thing, and I think the problem is more this other thing, and that's why we have radically different approaches. I happen to think that your hypersensitivity, I know you won't think that it's hypersensitivity, you're just being sensitive, not hypersensitive, but I think it's hypersensitivity, and I think that actually is counterproductive rather than productive. I think that's actually creating more problems than it's resolving, and that's why I'm so passionate about this when I talk about it, because I find it to be destructive. When I see the president and other politicians pandering to people, leaping to the conclusion that this cop was a racist, that's the reason he killed him, and when there's no evidence at all, I find that to be destructive. And especially when the evidence comes in and it proves pretty much conclusively that it had nothing to do with race. Look at how much division and hostility that causes, right? That is a huge, huge problem.
Right, but Vic, here's the thing, and I think I can tell you why there are some reasonable activists that do err on the side of, jumping on the bandwagon, and it's because, look, let's say you have Sandra Bland, the woman that wouldn't put her cigarette out and ended up dead, right? And let's skip whether she got killed by the cops or whatever, committed suicide, forget that part, but, she's hassled, turn lane. Was it because she was black? Was it because she was poor? She wasn't poor, as far as I know. Was it because she talked back to the cop? And if it was because she talked back to the cop, would it have been as severe with a white person smart alecking back to the cop? How much would it matter what social strata, what kind of car, things like this? But let's just say it would have been the same. That guy did not like being talked back to. He would have done it the same to me. Or if not to me, my younger self when I was long-haired and talking shit to cops, maybe the same thing would happen. Now, at a certain point, the important thing for an activist is, like, nail the cops for doing this shit, right? Nail them for doing this shit.
And I would take them more
suddenly,
serious.
when it happens more to black people, it's like, well, let's go with that, because we need to drill in and find out what's going on, and as activists, we feel like we're fighting a world that wants to pretend there's no issues here, where we could see dead people and whatnot. It seems like some issue, and so that's a problem.
The problem
on my
is,
side.
like, if people were equally outraged, like whenever a cop was overly aggressive, and believe me, I think we do have a problem with overly aggressive pig cops. I think that is a problem, but I think people focus too much on the black, and the reason that it happens more with blacks is because they're committing most of the crime, and it's not because they're just being selected out as criminals more. It's because they really are committing more crimes. Like
I don't know what you say.
statistically, they just are.
That's because you believe in that it's legit to profile. But Sandra Bland was there in the state for a job.
I don't know the details of that case, so I can't.
But she wasn't doing any
crime.
But
let's talk about the Mike Brown case, for example. If a white 300-pound behemoth, right, who, a cop tells him to get on the curb, and this guy starts giving him lip. He starts being defiant. He pushes the door, closes it. The cop tries to get out. He goes for his gun. He punches him in the face. I'm pretty goddamn sure that the same outcome would have resulted. He would have shot the fucking white behemoth. But the thing is, people immediately leap to the conclusion: white cop, black victim, therefore racism.
You remember the "Don't Tase Me, Bro"? And do you remember about how there were like 5 or 6, was like a year and a half worth of tased white dude, including some homeless guys tased to death? That it was mostly white victims, and it was a few students, like the "Don't Tase Me, Bro" guy with.
I honestly think that if you were to control for all the different issues, because I happen to think, I know you perhaps don't agree with me, but this is something that I notice. It's maybe anecdotal, but I'm not the only one. There are other people who believe the same thing. But I feel like in black culture, there is this very decadent subculture that is very hostile, rude, aggressive, etc. So when a cop approaches these people, right, I think these people are more likely to react in a hostile and aggressive manner than, say, a white person. By and large. Not always, of course, but by and large, I think that's more likely. And I think that might account for the discrepancy in these cases where you only see a racial difference, but really it's not just a racial difference. An attitudinal, is that a word? I don't know. Attitudinal difference.
Yeah, I think it is a word. But anyway, I know what you mean anyway. But I think attitudinal is the word. I buy that word. I've used that word. It better be a word. So, well, yeah.
I mean, do you think that's a possibility, though? Do you acknowledge that could be a possibility, that there's an attitudinal difference between the races, and that might account for the disparity in some of these cases?
Well, I think there's culture, and I think culture's family by family, and I think what you might not understand is when I was younger, lived in some neighborhoods where I found most of the people in the dangerous part of the neighborhood, where there's the armed cop in front of the Safeway. Most of the people will help you and are nice, friendly people. And if you're not freaked out about ebonics or anything like that, you can handle that. You'll find that different people are, all individuals. They have family cultures and stuff. So attitudinal,
well,
I think the people that are committing violent crime in the city definitely have an attitude problem that is cultural.
Maybe you misunderstood me. When I mentioned the whole jive, ebonics, that inner city twang or whatever, I wasn't saying that was the only problem. Obviously, I don't have a problem with
I understand.
people speaking that way. I'm just saying that people who spoke that way tended to be rude, hostile, or incompetent.
I'm saying when you go down there into the ghetto, so to speak, or an inner city, a lot of people are just trying to live their lives. A lot of old guys, they have a job and they have to put bars on their window, and then you walk down there and people are trying to sell you heroin on the street corner, and it seems like, oh, everybody's trying to sell me heroin here. Well, no, the other people that keep their life safe are just not hanging out on the corner because it's not safe in their neighborhood. They're in their house, they're somewhere else, So, I just see there's multiple cultures in these ghettos. But yeah, we do have a criminal culture that is a big problem, right? And I think
and it's just
I think of it more as economic.
There's so many things that.
Correct, but
I'm sure that's part. No, it's a multifaceted issue, right? Economics is certainly a component, but I still strongly believe that the culture is the predominant problem. That is the main problem.
And I would say the culture is
the PC thing. I know you don't call it PC thing, but I think the PC thing is to just call it. It's all about poverty and this and that and rape.
Well, it is the poverty, though. I mean, and that's the whole thing about this Tulsa riot example I used, where the white community went and burned down the black community's town, where they had all black businesses dealing with each other. And if instead that city had become a wealthy African American neighborhood in Tulsa, straight into modern times, I just feel there'd probably be less crime in a community with a lot of well-to-do business owners.
You know why I doubt that? You want to know why I doubt that? It's because, for instance, I've seen really nice neighborhoods that are predominantly white, a few blacks, right? Good upstanding citizens that are black, happen to be black, and it suddenly becomes more and more black, right? And then as the town becomes predominantly black, the town is destroyed. Okay, it literally
What are you
falls
talking
to
about?
shit.
When,
Crime goes
where
up.
have you seen that in your lifetime?
I've seen
The
it in the
white
state that I
flight of
live
the
in.
60s or whatever?
No, I've seen it in the state that I live in. I've seen it happen.
And property
I've
values
lived in those
drop,
neighborhoods. I've lived in those neighborhoods before.
and
When
was
I
property
moved in,
values
not
dropping
where
at
I
the
live
time?
now, but in the neighborhood that I lived in before, it was a predominantly white neighborhood, right? There were a few black people, but there were the upstanding citizen type, the educated type. All of a sudden, they started infiltrating from the city, like they started moving in from the city.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about again? I forget. Were you Toronto? No. Are you Canadian?
This is northeast. I don't like telling people where I live,
Yeah,
but
no, that's
northeast.
no. I don't like to ask either. I just wanted to get an idea because I mean, it's interesting to say that. So okay,
A
well,
New England
I
state,
don't know what to
let's
tell
say.
you.
And
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
when they came in, it just the crime went up, graffiti. They started just everything became unkempt. They wouldn't like mow their lawns and stuff like that. I mean, it's just a lot of shit that just
Right,
turned
but
to
probably
crap.
somebody in that family.
Litter.
But somebody in that family wanted to move up to a more rural place and get out of the city because they knew this was
and
bad
don't
for
get me
their
wrong,
kids, and then they
it's
brought
not
their
just,
kids, and they brought some of the city with them. But someone
yeah.
in that family was trying to change the culture of that family.
Well,
right?
I don't know if it was
Well, somebody
consciously,
must
but
have. Why would they leave?
and it's not. And don't get me wrong, it's not just black people either. Like there's white trash that will infiltrate into a town and completely destroy
I gotta
the place.
go, and you're opening this whole can of worms. Where as a liberal, I now have to fucking shoot you verbally, and I don't have time. So,
You don't believe in white trash? You don't believe that white trash exists? You're offended by that term.
Well, I'm not offended very easily. Yeah, I don't
Maybe
think
it's because you think that when I'm referring to white trash, I'm talking about like poor white people. I'm not talking about white poor people. I'm talking about trashy people who
I
are
get it.
Yeah,
I just think there's
like
other ways to talk
shitty
about
values.
like that.
Well, to me, there's trash of all colors, right? There's yellow trash, black trash, white trash. There's just trash.
Yeah, but for example, that idea makes it sound like every kid
there is
grows
trashy
up and becomes
culture.
part of that, but they don't. Some of the kids grow up and are like, my family was fucked up. I'm going to go not be that kind of person. So, I mean, I just don't like talking about people as if it's like this automatic. Just because a bad generation, that doesn't mean their kids aren't necessarily that same way. So to me, it's
always judge a person, an individual, by his character and his behavior, right? But when you're talking about the influences of culture, right? You can't deny that either. Like certain cultures are just more destructive, more antisocial, more decadent than others. It's just
like
a fact.
white culture, because we've stolen
there is white
from everybody.
There is thing as white trash culture. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm talking about white rich person culture. They fucking rape the whole world, so there's got to be a problem with them.
Well, I don't know about. Well, maybe. I mean, if we're talking about like Paris Hilton culture, if you're talking about Paris Hilton culture, then yeah.
No, I'm talking about the people that run our government that gave the bankers $1 trillion we didn't have to give them.
Well, again, I think it wasn't because, like I said before, that's not because we adore bankers. That's because the alternative would have been catastrophic. It was the lesser of two evils. It was basically
you could have given the money to the homeowners. You could have directly bought the mortgages.
Again, I'm not an economist, but I'm pretty sure.
No, but you know that those people would then have the money to pay their mortgages because the government would be paying the mortgages, so the banks would have got their money.
When I heard about this,
nobody goes to jail. That's a cultural problem that nobody goes to jail for stealing $1 trillion from America. Nobody goes to jail.
When the housing crisis,
that's a cultural problem.
Again, it could just
go. I've got to go, but I mean, by your own arguments, you can't deny there's a cultural issue to deal with there.
I don't know if that particular issue is due to a cultural problem.
I see.
Not every problem is necessary.
Well, maybe we could talk about this next week if you come, or even if you don't, because I think this is kind of an interesting little angle right here. What is a cultural? When do we know the difference between, is it related to intentionality? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very similar to the incompetence versus malevolence thing.
To me, it has to be it has to be a way of life. I mean, to me, a culture is like the way you conduct yourself, and not the way you work. Not how you conduct yourself in business and at
Well,
work.
not
To me, a
punishing
culture is
wealthy.
how you conduct yourself, like in everyday life. That's a culture.
Well, when wealthy businessmen make criminal decisions, like with Dow Chemicals or anything, there's definitely a culture of they don't go to jail. Okay.
But is that something that's
certainly don't go to-
cultural, or is it just greedy fuckers
Yeah.
who are doing this? I mean, is it
Well,
so
no.
pervasive and so
Well, we
are they
have a
so
legal system.
connected?
Yeah, it's because the people in power don't think they should have to go to jail for doing that. I don't know why, but it seems cultural. They think I should go to jail. If I stole $10,000, I'd go to jail. But if I steal $1 trillion,
Man, I don't know about
I
I don't know about you. I mean, we can leave it with this, but I don't know about you, but I tend to trust a rich guy over a poor. Like, I expect a poor guy to fuck me over for money before I expect a rich guy to fuck me over for money. Like, that's just me. I don't know, and it seems to make sense, right? Because the poor guy has a lot more to gain.
It's because we've culturally legitimized the way rich people fuck you over. So 25% credit card, that's just a fair bet. You signed the agreement. So we've just legitimized the way that we're fucked over by the wealthy to say it's just ordinary. And
I guess
with that. I'm actually fine with that. Up to the point where you steal $1 trillion and we recoup you for it.
I think maybe the difference is that rich people tend to fuck people over en masse, whereas poor people tend to fuck people over like individually.
Right.
So like an individual might feel safer dealing with a rich person, but and then a poor person might individually fuck that person, but en masse, collectively, rich people have more of an effect. That could be.
See, this is
but I don't know, this whole
I'm worried about the
rich people. I don't know. Is that even like rich people? Because
I don't really think so.
I'm in the quote unquote. I'm in the upper class.
I could tell you a bunch of really rich people I love that I'm fans boys of almost.
I'm a quote unquote rich person, and the thing is, even if you look at Hollywood, right? A lot of these Hollywoods are regressive liberals, right? They're Democrats, so it doesn't really fit the narrative, does it? These people are like filthy rich. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet they're voting for Bernie Sanders. They're pushing for Bernie Sanders and higher taxation and welfare and. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think it necessarily fits the narrative, but we can discuss.
Well, no, and the people letting them off the hook are not all, particularly rich either. I mean, they're rich-ish for a normal American, but you know what I mean, like a congressperson or these district attorneys. They're making $250,000 a year, good salary, but it's not like they're Donald Trump billionaire. They're letting people off. That's the part of the culture that I was really saying. And certainly, just as we finish it up, I mean, I think we need capital and wealth and wealthy people to make wealth.
I just don't think it's
I'm absolutely not saying it's about rich people, but I will demonize the bankers a little bit because it's gotten a little ridiculous.
That label is so broad, though, because then I would be included in that. So, like, I'm quote-unquote rich. No, I would be rich. I would be in that rich class because I'm a millionaire, right? And therefore, I'm like part of the problem because I'm rich. So I wasn't always a millionaire, right? I wasn't always quote unquote rich.
I'm not saying it was
nothing. I mean, think about it. That means you're essentially suggesting that you're middle class, and suddenly you become rich and you become this monster. What the fuck?
No, I'm not. You're not saying I'm suggesting that. You must have misunderstood.
Well, you were kind of suggesting this whole rich problem.
No, I just said the opposite, and as we got into it, I'm pointing out, as a matter of fact,
so you were trying to distinguish yourself from people.
Wealth and capital and wealthy people, and it's a part of the system. I don't believe everybody needs to make the same amount of money or that would work or any of that. And right now, I happen to be like a little bit fanboy about Elon Musk and there's a few other people.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I think this is the future.
And Bill Gates, even big humanitarians.
Even Bill Gates, who I didn't ever like Microsoft, still don't. But yeah, as a person and whatnot, I actually, So no, and so what I was saying though is if I was prone to demonizing a group that happens to be rich, I do think the bankers. I think we need to identify and point a few fingers because it's gotten a little ridiculous. Okay, it's just ridiculous how much money they can change our laws, rob us after the change of things that would have been illegal before that were illegal because that kind of thing could happen, and then they actually have the power to change our laws.
I see. The thing
so
is,
things are legal, and then they break the laws that were left over changed that they got to change, and then nobody goes to jail. I will point fingers at bankers. But
yeah,
it's
see, the thing is,
of bankers.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, I don't think that this is something necessarily restricted to bankers. I think this just happens to be people who are in power, who are, making a lot of money. They're going to use every loophole available to maximize their gains, their profits, right? So the issue, it's just a people problem. It's just people just are, they're going to use everything within the law to maximize their personal wealth and gratification, right? So the solution is not to like single out bankers. I think it's just to fix the loopholes, fix the laws, so that people can't exploit.
We didn't even have to. They should have just prosecuted the laws that were broken.
And you're sure that they actually broke a law? You're positive?
Yeah, I have looked into it enough. Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Yeah, there's definitely cases of fraud and lying and various emails where people knew things, and there's certainly knowledge that there's loan companies that were known to be lying about incomes, telling the customers to lie about the incomes. So and that's not even a clean cut.
But wait a minute. So okay, well, I mean, it's one thing to say like the what do you call it?
Well, you know what? I'll try to bring up some better actual cases, but I think there's enough.
I mean, there are so many.
I was hoping you would accept. Obviously,
but what I'm saying your theory doesn't really make any sense, because look, it's not just the government that would and the people just that were plagued by it. It was individuals, right? That were fucked over by this, right? Mm-hmm. So if individuals were fucked over by this, right, then they individually could file some sort of class action lawsuit. So what you're suggesting is that all lawyers were somehow involved in this conspiracy to let the bankers go. I was like, oh no,
no, because I don't know about the civil. I don't know if they're civil. I'll bet there probably are civil cases, because I've heard of various cases of people that paid their mortgage and then got repoed because of bad, keeping the paperwork wrong. No, I was just talking about the criminal thing, and there really was, I believe, zero prosecution for that. I don't think that if a working class guy, obviously couldn't blow $1 trillion, but if I did, I just don't feel, I'd be let off the hook for it.
So basically, are you talking about like the Attorney General then? I mean, are you saying like Eric Holder?
Yes, I think law enforcement, the attorney generals, and legal culture, that part of law, because not all lawyers are part. There's several cultures in law at least.
So,
but I do believe prosecutors have a tendency to not want to go soft on the super wealthy, and certainly powerful wealthy people that aren't just have money but actually have power in their local communities, or meaning states and nation as well. I think there's a tradition of going easy on them, and there's reasons like fear of the powerful, and if you don't take them all the way down, but mostly it's also just cultural. It's like giving them a break, assume benefit of the doubt. It's just easy to give that to a rich person that's given to the local university and various things. So I mean, I think it all colludes together, and not all of it is bad. Some of it is natural, but
yeah, I mean, I hear.
I gotta go because I need to get my estrogen fix off of watching Downton Abbey. So.
All right.
Because I've heard that testosterone will make me a good leader, but I need my.
Now you got it.
It's my last season.
Maybe that's why you're so beta.
Probably.
See, he admits
all that estrogen, man. Too much estrogen.
Well, it's just natural body estrogen. Watching the show releases your internal estrogen is all I can explain of why I like it. But anyway, so. Yeah, I wish people would realize that I am easygoing. People often treat me as if I'm not beta. And I'm
no, you definitely seem easygoing. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, well, I mean, people in my professional life, they think I'm opinionated or something. But anyway.
Oh, you're opinionated too, but you're,
That doesn't bother me as much.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive concepts. I think you can be opinionated and easygoing. To me, a person who's not easygoing is someone like
I would love to talk actually also about what alpha and beta. It's funny how it's come up, and then the MRA, this cuck thing. I would love to talk about that actually, because it's very interesting and it's a herd metaphor. Okay. But anyway, we got a lot of topics for the future. Yeah. So thanks you guys for coming, and everybody else that already left. And see you guys later.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. Bye.